This conference will now be recorded.
The town council together. It's second thing on is the business is the town administrator interviews, and that's what we'll be conducting today. Our first interviewee is here, and we will start and commence with that. And this is Mr. Gerald Vincent. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing fine.
You wanna give us?
Mayor, just real quick, just a logistical item before we get started, sir.
Sure.
Is, Mr. Vincent, you'll have 1 hour to have a discussion with the mayor and council.
Okay.
At the hour mark, we will stop the process. And each council member will ask you, I think one or some council members might ask you 2 questions. You have a total of 7 questions.
Okay.
So, thank you, sir.
If you want to take and start out and just do an introduction and whatever, and give us a minute or two to
Sure.
tell us all about you.
So good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council, and may I say happy 59th birthday to the Surfside Beach. I think that's excellent. Just 2 years older than me. Born and raised in Virginia. Went to school at Virginia Commonwealth University. They got knocked out in the first round of the NCAA, so my bracket was busted. Continued on in education with a master's in urban and regional planning. So I worked in Virginia for 17 years. Started out in the city of Chesapeake, and then I went into management into Southside, Virginia, which was city of Emporia in Brunswick County, Virginia. Then having kids, we moved to North Carolina while they were young, so we could attend schools, better schools than I had in Southside Virginia. So I had worked in North Carolina for 15 years, so 32 years altogether. I've got 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys. I'm almost out of debt. I've got 2 left in school. One's a graduate of Chapel Hill, applying to medical school. One's at East Carolina as a junior. One's a sophomore at Coastal Carolina. And then I've got one that stayed in Charlotte that just made me a grandparents for the first time. So we're excited about that. My latest position was in Anger, North Carolina, trying to be closer to my kids. But recently my wife and I realized that her parents, who just moved down here about a year and a half ago, were not able to kind of take care of themselves. So my wife decided a year ago she would move down here because her position with a bank is 100% remote. So she moved down here in April, but we realized in 2022 that she needed help. So I had informed the mayor at that time that it's going to happen. I just don't know when. December seemed to be a good time. My evaluation and my contract was up for renewal, and I'd asked the board at that time, do not renew my contract. I need to go back to Myrtle Beach. And so I resigned in December, and so far it's been a really good transition with the in-laws, the parents. We live in Market Common, and we are in walking distance from the Crabtree Memorial Gym. So we go to the gym first thing in the mornings, and so everything's worked out very well. My wife saw this position available and said, we're going to get this family part straight, so why don't you apply? So I did. It just happened that way. So I guess that's the good news for me. I'm excited to be here. I really did appreciate the board allowing the directors to interview the candidates. I think that says a lot for you because you actually you actually think that the employee's opinion of who should be the next administrator is important to them and it's important to you. And I think that trust goes a long ways. So I appreciate that. Hadn't seen that before.
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We have a total of 7 questions. The first question will be answered by Councilmember Drake.
How you doing?
Good. How are you, Greg?
Get your microphone.
How are you, why are you interested in working in the town of Surfside Beach? And how will your experience and leadership style help us achieve the expectations of council, department heads, employees, and our community? And a follow-up question to that is, how do you plan on handling difficult employees or department heads as you go along, as you find things that you may need to have?
Mr. Drake, to start off, when my wife and I looked at that we needed to perform this family obligation, I did apply for the deputy position back in about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interviewed by Bill Shanahan on, I think, two occasions with a conference call, when I think Sherry might have been on there one time. And then it was a full panel interview with the directors. It seemed like it was going to be a go at that time, but I believe because of inflation and the budget was coming up, the board decided to freeze that position at that time. So at that time, we were thinking hard and strong for me to come down to Myrtle Beach, and that position happened to be available at that time. But then the family obligation really took over. And again, like I said before, seeing that advertised was truly a blessing for me and my family. I've got 32 years of experience, both in Virginia and North Carolina. When I first started in local government, my professor said if I really wanted to understand local government, start at the bottom and move your way up, and I did. I started as a zoning inspector back in 1990, and I worked through the ranks to be an assistant city manager and eventually a city manager and town manager in Virginia and North Carolina. I've worked very hard with my staff over the last several communities, which is about 3 or 4, because I think staff is very important to getting things done. Staff is the asset to the community. It's not the town administrator. The board gives policy to the manager, and the manager directs the staff to do the work. I think that's very important. I did bring 2 documents that I actually introduced to the directors. You can hire personnel, but you've got to have a manual for them to understand what their job is and what their policies are. When I first started as manager, this was 3 or 4 pages long. Now it's about 76 pages long. This is a document, I believe, that protects the town and the employees, but it gives them a roadmap to how they earn sick leave, or how they are paid, or if they have a grievance, who do they go to? So I think that's very important. Second one is a budget, and I've been tuning into your workshops for some time now, ever since I applied for the deputy position. I've been listening to your budget work sessions, the last 2 that you've had. So I understand that, you want to have transparency. When I first started Andrew, again, the document was very small and just had numbers and letters and words next to it. When you look at this document now, you're going to see, number one, you're going to see an organizational chart. So you're going to know who oversees what and where they are. You're going to see bars, graphs, charts, pie charts. You're going to see how the money over time is increasing or decreasing. I mean, looking at numbers is one thing, but when you actually see it in a graph or a chart, then you'll understand where you're going in your finances, because that's the most important document that you guys are going to approve in a year, because it's a roadmap for the next 12 months, and it's very important. So I can hand those to you and let you see them. And the joke is with the chief was, when you're done with it, you can just go ahead and put it on my desk. But he stepped into that one. Over the course of time, such as COVID, which was a bad time for all of us, but we learned a lot. And now we have team meetings all the time. We don't even get out of the office hardly anymore, which in some ways is a blessing, but other ways you don't get the interaction that you normally do. The good news for COVID is bank rates came down below 2%. And I went in through our finances and I refinanced 3 loans that we had outstanding in Anger on the utility side. And we refinanced less than 2% and saved $1.5 million. What that does is help us in the next fiscal year, not to raise rates, but actually hire additional employees and buy equipment. So I've worked anywhere from, finances to economic development, but to actually manage departments is something that I've been very successful with. I started a slogan in Andrew called One Town, One Team. And because I wanted the staff to understand they're not by themselves, they're not alone, but we need to help each other. Before I took the position in Andrew, apparently the manager there was all about himself. And that's all he cared about. He didn't care about getting cost of living adjustments for the employees. It was all about him and his contract. So when I got there, they were snake bit because they didn't know if I was going to be the same person that just left, and I was not. So I take care of my employees. I have an open door policy, not only for my staff and council, but also for the citizens. If people need to talk to me, my door is wide open, and I never say no. Can I resolve every issue that comes through my door? The answer is probably no, but I will listen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I've got the next question.
Okay.
So the question is, what do you perceive to be the administrator's role in dealing with council? And how do you view the role of council in dealing with the administrator and department heads?
As administrator, I work for the board. So I take direction from the board. I've learned over 32 years, I don't take decisions personally anymore. There may be something that I'm passionate about, but if you go a different direction, then that's the policy. So my job is to carry out your policies and carry them down to my employees, to my directors, and get the job done.
And as a follow-up to that is, what if you have different council members that have different opinions? I mean, how do you deal with that?
How I've dealt with that in the past is we talk through it. Now, there may come a stance at the 11th hour that we agree to disagree. But it's up to the council to establish that policy. All I can do is give the information that I'm supposed to give to the board, give you the facts, and you guys make the decision. If it's something that I am recommending that you are against it, then all I can do is give you the facts and you make your decision. That's all I can do.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Holder, you had a question number 3.
Good morning, Mr. Benson.
Good morning.
I do recognize you. I lived in Charlotte, so I recognize you from Huntersville.
Yes, sir.
But my question is, tell us about a time you had a major task or a project that you needed a lot of support from the staff. How did you get their support? How did you motivate them? And what were those results?
So the major project we had in Huntersville was called a town center project, which was a 3-story building where 2/3 was built for the staff and the other 1/3 was for Discovery Place Museum. Behind the building was also a 3-level parking deck. There were many factors to designing, funding, project administration, and to get the work done, because there was streetscape, there was water sewer, there was drainage, and then there was a building. And by the way, I worked very hard with Creech and Associates on that project. We designed it, we got it funded, we did project administration, it took us about 18 months to complete it. And so with John Crawford and Brent Green, worked very hard with them on that project. We met weekly, staff, which is Public Works, Public Utilities, Planning, and also we had electricities. So our electric company was involved as well. On the private side was all of our utilities. So it was cable, gas, water, sewer, and drainage. So staff had to work together to make sure not only do we design it so that our project underground is efficient as it flows and drains, but also above ground, because we wanted the Discovery Place Town Center to be the jewel of the downtown in Huntersville. So working diligently with staff, dividing up duties. I'm in the mix with them because I was a project manager for that with the architects. They got it done. It was scheduled for 24 months, got it built in 18 and under budget. There were many pots of funds that we could use because there were restricted funds that you could only use certain money for. And that had to be managed through a finance department.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Keating. I'm in my 4th term on council and 2nd year, or my 4th year in my 1st term, and my 2nd year as mayor pro tem.
Well, good morning.
Over the past couple of years, we've been trying to drive a focus and a priority-driven mentality within town hall and within operations. We have a history of being very reactive and not proactive. So, but we're having difficulty establishing really actionable goals and objectives, and then maintaining that focus on how to achieve them. You know, a metric system or a tracking system and so forth. What is your experience in establishing priorities and setting that proper focus and monitoring to actually have them achieved?
So council in a workshop or discussions, council, the mayor, with the manager and staff need to give us direction. Where do they see the town going? There's got to be a vision. So if you look in the budget, you'll see that there is a CIP that talks about that budget year, but then there's a CIP that talks about the next 5 years. I think you've got, when you talk about budgeting, you're not just talking about capital improvement projects. You're also talking about staffing. Staffing is the biggest number that's going to drive your budget, and it can bust the budget very quickly. And sometimes you have to raise rates when you don't want to. But if it's the board's priority to understand that the fire department needs 4 employees and the police department needs 2 employees, you either have to cut somewhere or you've got to increase your revenues somewhere, which could be your real estate. So you've got to set a vision, and you've got to set it out in the next 5 years to understand if it's a building program that you're looking for. If you need to add, you've got to add a town hall, police station, and the rest of your staff. You need to set that priority, and you also need to look at when are you going to expect the funding to come in? Where's the funding source coming from? And when do you plan to actually start that program? It can be a sliding scale, but you've got to start somewhere in that CIP to make it clear to this board and actually the next board know that this is what we've set at our vision. Obviously, they can change that vision, but it's got to be really hard discussions between the board and the administrator and staff. The staff is the ones they're going to know. My services are increasing in public works. I've got to have more gas because drainage is just absolutely going crazy right now. Or there's more fires to put out. Or we're not getting 50,000 visitors a year. We're getting 60,000. There's a little bit more crime going on. So the chief needs more people to maintain the safety. So we've got to set the vision, and then we got to put it on a piece of paper and talk about it.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Kinkin.
Well, I'd like to ask a question first. I know Huntersville is a huge growth area. Was Anger growing?
Yes, sir.
Because we're locked in at two square miles.
You are. So it's a little different. Everything in the Raleigh region, the Triangle region, is growing like crazy. The south, I would say the southwest piece is Holly Springs, Fuquay Varina, and then there's Anger. So Anger is about 5,700 people now. They've got 7,000 lots already been approved. So in 5 years, they're going to be 15 to 20,000 people. It takes about 3 to 4 years to completely build out a subdivision of 250 to 300 lots. Once that gets done, it's going to change dramatically. The board's going to change dramatically because it's not going to be the people who grew up there. It's going to be outsiders that want to get involved in politics and run for positions on the board.
Okay.
So a very growing area.
Thank you. Based on exit interviews conducted with past employees, I have received criticism about council members having too much involvement in day-to-day activities, operations of departments and staff, to the point of interference. This has created disagreement and dissension at town hall. As an administrator, how would you handle situations like this? Are there some examples of your approach that you can share?
Yes, sir. So in the past, I've had board members that have actually set their own policy that they would rather all the board's questions go to the manager. And that's fine. But there are some times when the manager is not available for the council members, and I set the policy that council members, I don't mind you going to my directors to have a discussion or a conversation, but please don't give them direction without talking to the administrator first. Don't have any problem with discussions between a director or an employee and council members. But when it comes to actually changing direction or giving them duties to do and the administrator not knowing about it, it's just a courtesy, because I would do the same thing with a board member. So I've had boards set their own policy, and then I've had boards allow me to give my input, which is I don't mind the mayor or the council members talking to the fire chief. But if you're asking him to do something that is not in his normal duties and the administrator doesn't know about it, I would just ask as a courtesy, please let the administrator know what you're going to ask the police fire chief to do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Laverne Crackclaw. I just don't have my question right here. I got it. What will your first steps be upon assuming responsibility in this position? And also, what would you hope to accomplish in your first year?
In the past, I'm going to sit and listen for about 3 months. I want to listen to what everyone has to say. I want to meet with the council. It could be one-on-one, it could be two-on-one. But I want to listen to, I guess, one is, what has been your frustrations in the past? And where do you want to, what's your next steps? What is it that you want to see as a mayor? What is it that you want? I've had some very strong mayors in my 32 years, and I've had some that just kind of did whatever the board wanted to do. And my preference is, it doesn't matter to me, but I know that each of you has a goal and a vision of what you want to do in this town. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear from staff. I would plan to meet with every director individually just to understand, what are we doing right now? What are the hiccups, and how are we proceeding forward? I think that's very important to understand. I know fire chief wants, 4 more people in his budget. My reality has been to my directors is, suppose you don't get 4. Suppose you only get 2. Can you operate with 2? Or the police chief, suppose you don't get any. How are you going to adjust? Because it's not going to be my decision, it's going to be the board's decision. So we need to plan for that. Again, my open door policy with my staff, and any of them could tell you that when they come in with a problem, I've always made sure that they come in with a solution, or at least let's discuss it. They've come in before to ask about what their problem has been. And I've never said no, or something they want to do that's totally different what they've done before. And if I'm not totally on board with it, my answer is let's continue to discuss this, because I need to work through it on my mind as well.
You want to take the last, Mr. Holt?
Yes. Okay. What is your municipal finance experience? You've talked about some of the budget and stuff you've done. And what role have you weighed and prepared your budgets? And in budgets that you have prepared and assisted in preparation, how do you communicate effectively of services to the neighborhood?
I'm sorry, the last part?
How do you talk about the services that the town gives out of the budget?
So when it comes to budget season, it takes 6 months. My process has always been, it takes 6 months to get a budget adopted. You get about 6 months of a reprieve and then you're back at it again, but you're always working on your budget. If you look at that budget, you'll know that it is totally transparent. So when you look in the right-hand column, you'll see nothing but notes. When I worked with the staff and the finance director, those notes are really for us, for staff, so we'll know what that information is. But when we present it to council, the notes were moved off the sheet, but the same questions kept coming up. Why, what does this number mean and why this number? So we put the notes back, totally transparent. So when I work on a budget, it is every single number that we look at with the finance director. What I've done in the past is I set a budget work schedule. I will meet with staff or directors on 2 occasions. The first is tell me your wish list. And that's every department. The finance director and I will put that wish list together and we'll see what the revenues are and we'll see what the expenditures are. And then I'll meet with those directors again and say, guys, we're $1 million short in revenues. Where can we cut? Sharpen your pencil. They'll know in advance before they come in, how can we cut our budget to meet the revenues? And typically, sometimes it's just not that easy. It has to go to the board as not a completely balanced budget. And it's up to the board to balance that budget along with staff. So I've worked very hard with budgets in the last several years. We've been very diligent in receiving the GFOA award for outstanding financing. I've noticed that Surfside Beach has received it for a couple of decades of excellence in their budgeting. And I think that's very important. I did read the budget or the finance report for Surfside Beach. It's 127 pages. But I think you guys have done an outstanding job. I think the staff has done an outstanding job. They've received those awards of excellence. There's no material weaknesses, so you're doing it right. Can you fund everything? The answer is no. Just an example, back in North Carolina, we have enterprise funds. So in particular, a general fund and a utility fund. And I gave this example to the directors is that in some cases you have to be creative in your financing. At one point in time, the general fund could not sustain the expenses. But because there's a utility fund, which is totally separate revenues and expenditures, the manager and a number of staff members, including the council, actually oversee that budget. So we had actually transferred 50% of those expenses from the general fund into the utility fund to help offset the cost until the next following year when revenues actually came in. And then we switched the expenses back. General fund could hold its own, utility fund could hold its own. Very transparent as far as the services that are rendered through that budget. Again, those notes will tell the tale of what every dime and penny is spent for.
When you look at Surfside, we aren't that big. You don't have the staff that you may have had in the past. So that makes it tougher on them and on you.
It makes it tougher. You're about almost as many employees as there's Andrew. Of course, Andrew's going to continue to grow. So they're going to be over 50, over 75 in the next 5-10 years. I've worked in the past with a very lean staffing model, which means not just one employee just does one thing. Everybody is cross-trained, whether it's in the finance department, police department, fire department, everybody just doesn't have one duty. And even myself, I'm not just going to be the administrator, but I'm going to help with the planning director or public works or finance, wherever I can, to help ease the burden of the workload that we have or they have and make it work. There's a team here, and I want to emphasize that it's one town, one team, and we've all got to be on that same page.
Okay, that's it for our questions. Is there any follow-up questions from council?
You talked about why you left Anger, you moved down for your family.
Right.
But why did you leave Huntersville?
My kids were just getting ready to go into school, into college, and they weren't going to college around Charlotte. Everybody was moving towards the east. My son's at East Carolina. My daughter was in UNC Chapel Hill, and I knew my youngest daughter was going to go to Coastal, even though she was still a junior in high school. We tried to convince her to at least stay in the Charlotte area. At least we'd have one child there, but everybody seemed to be moving further away from where we were. My wife had changed jobs in the banking industry out of Wells Fargo to Morgan Stanley, and she's 100% remote. So she could move anywhere she wanted to, which made it very nice. Also in the Raleigh region, my mom was living in Virginia Beach. Now she moved back to Emporia, Virginia, which is just an hour and a half away. So family was getting closer. My brother lives in Duck, North Carolina, and my other brother lives in Brunswick, Virginia. So family was much closer than Charlotte. Didn't like that drive on 85 all the way to Charlotte. It took about 4 hours from Virginia.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a follow-up to the question Mr. Drake had asked. He ended the question with, what's your experience in dealing with some problem employees? I mean, you've got your mantra of one town, one team. Well, we often struggle with understanding that even though we have just a few employees, they're not always on the same team.
Personnel issues are very frustrating. In the past, I've had some very frustrating personnel issues. If the issue gets to a point of legal standing, then I've always leaned on the town attorney, because even though I took law 101, I am not an attorney, and I don't claim to be. So you need to lean on people who have the expertise when it comes to personnel issues. When there's a problem employee, if it's at a director level, then I will take full responsibility to find out why there's a problem. If it's at a lower level, then it would be the director and I meeting with that employee to find out what's going on and how can we change it. And if we can't change it, are you better off staying here, or if you're better off going somewhere else?
Seeking your excellence elsewhere.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Are there any other follow-up questions?
Mr. Vincent, you mentioned and you have staff that have multiple functions. What is your opinion on human resource in a small town? Is that a single function or is that a multiple function?
Well, when I first started in Anger, we did not have a full-time HR person, but it was very much needed. Can you cross-train someone? You absolutely can, but HR takes a lot of your time in your day. That document did not get written overnight. It took a good 4 years, and it's a constant document in motion because things change and laws change and federal laws change. You can do one or two things without not having HR, or you can outsource it. Or you can cross-train someone to take on those duties. Again, an HR function, as the town continues to grow with additional employees, you're going to need a full-time person eventually.
Go ahead.
You mentioned you come from the town, came from the size-wise, started out about the size of Surfside. We're under 4,000 residents, but just keep in mind, it's 1.9 miles.
1.9.
That's it.
Right.
There's no where to go. It ain't gonna get bigger tomorrow. It ain't gonna get bigger next week. 2 years, 10 years from now, it ain't gonna get bigger.
Right.
Its growth is about max. There's a few lots here and there. Our 17 business side needs a massive overhaul. We could really use a lot more concentration on bringing business in, which would bring tax revenue into the town.
Correct.
Without relying on the backs of the resident. We have a lot of senior citizens that live here. A lot of people lived here a very long time. Those people receive Social Security. They're in a bubble. That's all they got.
Right.
So when you think you retired, I retired, come here, we're a different scenario. So raising millage here means a lot to a lot of people. And we want to be safe. We want a good police department. We want a good fire department.
Right.
But we have to use some reasoning with that. And we have mutual aid with our fire department. Police department, we got Horry County, I'm assuming is backed up, Myrtle Beach is backed up, and we have to have good relationships. What do you see Surfside Beach as? It can't grow any bigger.
Right.
So as you put on employees, that's our number one expense, employees. And I like your idea of cross-training people because you're gonna wear multiple hats.
Right.
Bottom line. And so is the police chief, so is the fire, so is public works. Everybody's gonna have to work together in this. You just can't have isolation. So what do you see how do we get that under control where we don't have such overspending in certain areas and use the funds that we do get in the correct manner?
And you're correct. Your budget is probably more than 80% is your salaries and benefits. It's probably more than 80%. I think with the town of Surfside Beach, because it's 1.9 square miles, there's no annexations, there's no more growth. You really want your economy to be diverse. You want more of a commercial mix than you have as a residential. So it's my job to go out there and meet with the Chamber of Commerce and help promote the businesses along 17. Absolutely. I think one of the questions was, what are you going to do in your first 100 days? Well, I'm going to not sit in my office entirely. I want to get out to the community. My wife and I have been attending Surfside United Methodist Church. We've been to some of the bazaars and some of the community events here. But you need to work with getting more retail because that's going to be your tax base, and that's what you have as your tax base, and that's going to help lessen the burden to the residents, especially if you have to increase your real estate rate. I think that's very important. Cross training, you've got to do it. If you've got a lean staffing model, then you've got to cross train people. There might be a little not so happy about it, but I think that's what you have to do as a team to make it work. So when you can afford that additional employee or two.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mims, I know you probably studied our town and you probably have a little background on what you think the town is doing. On your perspective, what do you see that you could change in this town as of in the first 100 days that might make this town a little better?
Visually, I think you need to, when you plan, there's more work that needs on 17 business. You need to get your stakeholders involved in your community because if you've got a rundown looking business or shopping center, you need to have them involved in, your appearance is a reflection of the town. We did ride around the town and look at, you're talking about drainage issues and items, structures being built and within right of ways. Even though you are 2 square miles, there's still a lot of work here to do.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of work. I've seen every one of your parks. I visited every one of your parks. There's still a lot of work to do. Are there ways that maybe Horry County can come in to help with certain situations, with their deep pockets? Is there grants out there available that can help you spruce up your parks without using your town's money? Yeah, there absolutely. Do I have a future vision of Surfside Beach? I do not. It's a very nice beach. My daughter, I think Coastal Carolina students come here all the time, because I know she's here all the time. I know you got a wonderful pier that you're working on that's taking some time to get built, and I know there's been some issues there. That's going to be your draw. I mean, I understand you have 45 residents, but you've got 50,000 visitors, and it's only going to get stronger. COVID hurt every single type of beach community. I think it's slowly coming back, and your revenues are showing that. You're getting more and more revenues by your visitors. I see it just in Market Common 5 minutes away. There's so many people around here. I don't see inflation. I don't see there being a problem. People are spending money like it's growing on trees. Now, I do know when it comes to construction and cost, it's 40% more. Creech and Associates, I know will do a very good job for you, but in Andrew, I was working on a town hall complex during COVID. As we got out of COVID, we got a guaranteed max price of what our town hall was going to cost, and it was 40% higher than we anticipated. So instead of $7 million, it was going to cost $11.1 million, and with soft cost, it was almost $16 million. And the board had to say we had to stop. We had the financing in place. We were ready to go. Staff was about to move out so we could demolish and build new, and it just didn't happen. It's unfortunate.
Mr. Mayor, just one more follow-up question. I like your statement that it's your job to meet with the chamber and talk about business development. That has been something we have tried to do and establish twice. We now have a more focused business committee, a volunteer-based ad hoc business committee that has met with the chamber for the second time on the same topic, because the first time got no traction out of the administrator. But this all comes down to setting those priorities, maybe not so much goals and objectives, but just daily work tasks. And I'm sure, Chief Clemens can tell you that there's so much chaos, and we often refer to it as the circus in town hall, that due to, Mr. Kinkin's question about council members coming in with constant questions and bringing up lesser important items to be addressed that take up your time. How do you set those priorities and, tell council, it's an individual council members, it's not a vote of council, it's individual council members that are off on some tangent of something. And I don't even have an example of what that could be, but it's just not as high a priority as the plate you already have full.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
I think over time that I've been very successful with time management. I make it a priority to answer every email within a business day. I make it a point to return phone calls. And I make it important for me to get out of the office. Because there's a lot of busy work going on, and I could probably sit in the office all day and get work done. But I need to get out to mingle with my staff, see what's going on in public works, go out in the field, talk to chamber members, go out and walk through the business community. And just, number one, not just to let them know who I am, but let them know if you've got any issues, please come to me. So I want it to be more of a caring response that I'm the town administrator, but I'm just not going to sit in an office to do busy work. So I'm sure that can be done, but time management is very important, and I think I'm very good at it.
That's all the questions. We thank you very much for coming in today.
Yes, sir.
We'll definitely give your applications consideration.
Okay.
You'll be hearing from us.
Well, I just want to say too, thank you, one and all. I've seen the events that you guys have. You do a very good job at promoting it. Mayor, you've got a weekly newsletter that goes out, very informative. And that's kind of my communication to the board. Over the years, I developed what I call a Friday news. And so if there's important items that I need the board to understand, I will, as a group email, I will send it out to the board and say, this is what went on this week, or these are some important dates. And you do a very good job at that. I know that you're promoting a lot of things on the Facebook page. You're getting the information out. You've got great events that are going on. So even if you don't hire me, what you're doing, continue to do what you're doing. Because I think you're doing a great job.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more thing that I'd like to know. Are there anything that you'd like to address to this council before your time's out or here? Are there anything that we did not cover that you'd like to inform us of?
No, sir. And then again, I've been watching your workshops. And I told staff, not because I have nothing else to do, I'm just very interested, and I have been since I applied for the deputy position back April a year ago. You've got a lot of great things going on here. A lot of the smaller communities, even in North Carolina, are wanting to do what you're doing, have those very successful events. And then for the next year, how can we make it better and bigger for more people? Don't overcrowd yourself with so many events during a year, but just make the ones that are very successful even better. And I think that's very important, and you're doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Y'all have a
Appreciate your
good day.
time.
I think our next interview is going to be on a Zoom meeting. So it's going to take us a few minutes to prepare for it. And we're going to get that person on the line and we'll start at 11 o'clock.
No, it goes to 11:15.
Oh, 11:15.
10:15, 11. Where are we? 11:15, 12:15. That's. So what do you think?
I don't know, does it matter? Doesn't matter. Well, it depends on the person, I guess. If they want to brag about it, they'll tell you. If they don't want you to know, they won't tell you. So, yeah, so I was gonna say, you want to know if they know Mr. Childs. Yeah, it's not a tattoo, it's branded. It's a KT tape. Springs, I have tendonitis.
So
Should be.
Yes, and it works.
Yeah?
It really,
Like 4 weeks ago?
yeah,
11:15.
it's like, I've had this pain for 3 weeks.
Is it right here?
It's, I pulled from here to, just here. And then it sprang it to here because it didn't do anything. It just was taking the pills, the Tylenol and the inflammation stuff.
I was about to chance to.
And then, what's that? Yeah, it's perfect for that. In 3 days, it relieves this pain. I still have one here.
Okay, we're gonna recess until 11:05.
This
Okay.
conference will now be recorded.
We'll call this special meeting back to order. We're now waiting to have our next applicant who is going to interview over a Zoom call. We're waiting for them to connect, so we'll give them a few minutes.
So I just talked to him, Mr. Mayor, said he should be.
Chief, he looks pretty okay.
You know, it is amazing how hard it is to keep making sure you don't look good.
That's not what the movies tell you.
Yeah. Some of my wife tells me.
They say every man looks good to you.
I bet you like you in the, rear view mirror.
I wrote a check.
Oh, I look good in the rearview mirror of a Corvette. I gotta bring this thing over here. We gotta do a show and tell. I've already drank.
I'm telling you, you gonna come home.
You're
gonna be sitting.
You said he is still here?
He's still here Saturday. Saturday.
Until Sunday.
Yes.
Reach 500 miles yet?
Nope, I'm at
Get
300,
on it.
I'm at 360.
You want me to come over
As
and
soon
help
as
you?
that thing reaches that 500, I gotta let it reach 500, and then I gotta shut it down, lock all the doors. Takes about 15 minutes for the computer to reset, and it gives, right now it's 30%.
He wasn't like that. He was moving.
So 500 miles
Yeah.
RPM opens up, and then you gotta let it set, whatever it does, and then it opens up all the doors.
When I was at
I had it
Fort
down.
So
Jackson,
one
they
of
had
Kenny's
armadillo
cameras,
come in.
instead of R3, they're gonna be on your street, so they can be on
I did.
advanced.
One.
First one I'd ever
seen.
seen.
It's hard to.
It was like a big possum.
They're
Armored
fun to
possum.
drive.
Armored
They
possum.
are
It is.
fun.
Yeah, seen him on that.
It broke my heart to get rid of
It
them.
is.
I
I haven't even been able to experience it yet.
I didn't want to live in South Carolina.
Not one of the new ones, no.
They say this, I mean, this bit is.
Oh, it's unbelievable, and I haven't even felt its full potential.
Yeah.
Like even right now, man, when I start that thing up, my neighbor called me up there, and I backed out, and he goes, you shook the house. And I'm like, no, I didn't. But he
There
goes,
you go,
because you
Sandy.
can just hear that thing.
Sure.
that thing started.
There you go. Go grab whatever you want.
It's
Drugs
awesome.
are in the house.
It's awesome.
Don't tell Kenny.
Drug dealer.
Uh-oh. Is that for you or Mr. Crocklaw?
No, it's for Chris.
Oh, for Mr. Steen. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and let him come in. And we'll test it. Mr. DeWitt?
Hey, good afternoon, Chief. How are you?
Ah,
Good morning still.
Good morning.
Good, yes, good afternoon. And you can see me okay?
Yes, sir. I can see and hear you well.
All right, good, because we can see you and we can hear you well. I know that you cannot see the council members. I don't believe I'd have to move my computer around to be able to do that. So, I don't believe you
Small
can, right?
blessings.
Is that plugged in?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. And no worries. I'm sorry they have to see my face.
Well, I will let you know, as I'm looking at you, sir, they are off to my right, sitting at the dais. And what I'm going to do, we're going to try, and if you can hear them okay, each one of the council members will ask a question. I think a couple of them have multiple questions. It's 7 questions, sir. You'll have an hour for the interview. And then when we start to get close to that hour, if you take that long, I will let you know. So, Mr. DeWitt, if there's a problem with the audio and you can't hear a question, ask me. I will repeat it. And I've asked each council member to introduce themselves as they ask you the question, so you'll know who you're speaking to.
Fantastic. I look forward to meeting everybody virtually.
So, all right, sir. Well, we hope everything is okay with you and your family. We appreciate you joining us on the Teams call. So, thank you.
Yeah, everybody's good, and I appreciate the understanding. Again, I didn't want to be a spreader, and just in case that in a couple days I end up testing positive like the kids have, but fortunately the kids are well. Besides some stuffy noses, everybody seems to be doing very well, so I appreciate the thought and sentiment there, Chief.
Well, yes, sir, we didn't want you to be a spreader. So we thank you very much, and with that, we'll let the mayor start.
Good morning. My name is Bob Hellier. I'm the mayor here at Surfside, town of Surfside Beach. And we'll be asking you a total of 7 questions. And each council member has been assigned to give a different one. And we're going to start the interview with council member Michael Drake. He's going to ask question number 1. So here he is.
Yes, sir.
Hello, how you doing? I'm Michael Drake, town council member. Why are you interested in working for the town of Surfside Beach? Is the first question. And how will you express leadership and style and achievements and expectations to council on the department heads, employees, and our community? But also, as you go along, if you have any experience with, I'm pretty sure you do, with some tough employment that you've had before, or employees over the past that were problematic, how did you handle that?
So I'll go back and address the first, I'll try to address these in order. My interest in Surfside really began as a young child. I was telling your staff when I was meeting with the department heads in the first round of meetings, I came to Surfside for about 2 weeks every summer to stay with my grandmother who had a place in Surfside. So I grew up coming to the Surfside Beach and spending time with her. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. I think my parents were fortunate enough to be able to get 2 weeks of retrieval from me because I was a very active young child, and going to the beach and running and having a good time there at Surfside is something I have very fond memories of coming up. So my affinity goes way back. And then I am from the low country area of South Carolina. Spent a lot of time going to the coastline. If you're familiar with the low country of South Carolina, I'm from the Somerville Goose Creek area. And if you're very familiar with the low country, I'm from Latson, which is a small community between Goose Creek and Somerville. So I have an affinity for the coastline and for the shore. So between those two things, when I saw the opening in Surfside, it really drew my interest. The other thing that I'm sure that your folks have shared with you is that my contract is coming up June 30, so I am actively looking for employment elsewhere. If you want to, we can talk a little bit more about that. I don't want to take up all the time sort of digressing into that for this one question, but come June 30, I'll be unemployed here at the city of Newberry. So it's been a great 13 years, 7 years as manager. We've done a lot of great projects, a lot of good things. To sort of move on to your next part of your question there, my leadership style is one that I hope that I'm hiring the right people to do the job. So I don't want to ever have to be a micromanager, but if there's ever a situation where I need to step in and be more hands-on with somebody, I of course have had that experience in my past having to do that with people who aren't quite meeting expectations and need that extra bit of encouragement. But I am an encouraging manager. I'm a positive kind of guy. I want to lead by example. I'm somebody who likes to get in, roll their sleeves up, and do a lot of the heavy lifting. So if there's a project, for instance, like the pier project that you all are trying to finish off, that's something that I'm going to want to be very active in and very hands-on with, because I know how big of a profile project it is for Surfside. I've read a lot about it, and that would be something that I would want to get in and help do the heavy lifting on to help finish that off. So my leadership style, I think, is a servant leadership style. I'm somebody who likes to get in. I have an offensive lineman mentality. I was telling you here last time I was with him. I'm a former college offensive lineman, and I understand that offensive linemen don't score touchdowns. And the glory goes to the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the running backs. And I like to envision myself, again, as a servant leadership and somebody who still has that offensive lineman mentality. So for me, it's not so much about getting the credit for the end job, but making sure that the team reaches their end goals and that the team is successful, that council looks good, that the department heads look good. And at the end of the day, I believe, to use that coastal analogy, a rising tide raises all ships. So if we're achieving our goals and we're doing good things for the community, the council's getting the credit, the department heads look good and they're getting the credit, then I think automatically then I become a success there in Surfside. So that's a little bit about my leadership style. As far as difficult employees, I have had some challenges along the way with employees that haven't quite met expectations, but I have yet to have anybody be just obstinate and outright refuse to do their jobs. That's never been an issue. I feel like I've made some really good hires in my career. I've built a really good staff here in Newberry. I feel like when I walk away from this community, they're going to be set for years and years to come with the staff that we've built. I like to hire people that are conscientious and care about the communities that they're coming to serve. And that's sort of my focus on making sure that we make good hires so that you're keeping the employee concerns at a minimum, hopefully, for conflicts and things that can arise because you've put the right people in place to get the jobs done. And ultimately, if we're doing the things that the community has expectations for, you mentioned expectations of the community, I feel like you're going to be in good shape because if the community's needs are being met, services are being delivered, projects are getting completed, then I feel like that's going to put everybody in a good place. So hopefully I've answered all those questions. If there's a follow-up on that, I'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this is Mayor Hellier again, and I have the next question. The next question is, what do you perceive to be the administrator's role in dealing with the council? And how do you view the role of council in dealing with the administrator and department heads?
So the form of government there is slightly different than what I'd be coming from. I'm in a council manager form of government, so my responsibilities here in Newberry are slightly more enhanced than they would be there in Surfside. So I understand that the administrator's role there in your community is to be a conduit for council to the staff, making sure that we are meeting objectives and completing goals and tasks. So how I would view my role there would be somebody who would be a great communicator from staff to council and from council to staff to make sure that objectives are being met. And let's see, where else was I going with this? I feel like that's something that I'm really good at. I'm good with communication. I'm good with communicating goals and goal setting and goal implementation. I feel like, as long as council is able and willing to be communicative back and open and forthright in how they feel that things are going, I mean, that's a big thing for me too, is I like to know that my council feels 100% open to communicating with me about how they feel and don't really mince words. I like good constructive feedback, and sometimes feedback is harsh, but that's okay because that's how we learn from what we're doing and how we improve on things. So that's sort of how I view myself to council. I like direct communication. I like open dialogue, and I like to be able to sit down with council and set a plan. And once the plan is set, I would hope that everybody would be good with sticking with that plan. What makes management difficult a lot of times is when there's a lot of twists and turns in what plans have been set. So, I'm a planner. I'm somebody who likes to sit down and work out a plan and everybody agree to what we're going to be doing moving forward, knowing that there will be changes along the way. There's always an audible that needs to be called from time to time in order to achieve the goal. And I understand that, but for the most part, I would like to think when we all agree to something, that's the vein that we would remain in to get that job done. And that along the way that we would communicate periodically to make sure that things are being met, things are in order, and that ultimately that you all in the community are happy and pleased with the direction we're headed in. So I hope that answered your question, Mayor.
Yeah, sort of as a follow-up to that, every council member is an individual, and we are supposed to operate as a council as a whole. Now, there are different council members that have different opinions on the way things should be. And it's our job to communicate to you what council wants, not what an individual wants. But the individual council are going to be talking to you too. So how are you going to differentiate between an individual and council as a whole?
Well, I am always up to conversation and dialogue, no matter what the given topic. But what I would try to stress to each individual council member is I would always refer back to the plan. I would stress to the individual that may have a differing opinion of how we do things that as a group, we had decided that this is the vein we need to go through in order to achieve our goal. And that if there's going to be a major change to that plan, that we all need to get together again and have a conversation. And again, I know there will be audibles called along the way in order to finally achieve our ultimate outcome. And I'm not opposed to those changes, but I want to make sure that we all agree to those changes and that everyone's on the same page. Because if you start to do a bunch of one-offs, you're never going to get to the end result that you're looking for. And that becomes problematic, not only for the community not getting the projects that they want completed in the end, but it also becomes problematic for the administration because they can never quite achieve those goals because there's always a one-off that sort of moves the goal line. And if the goal line is constantly moving, then you're never going to quite achieve that goal.
Thank you. Next question is going to be given by Councilmember Holder.
Hello, I'm Paul Holder, and I'd like to ask you this. Tell us about a time you had a major task or project that you need a lot of support from staff. How did you get the support? How did you motivate them? And what were the results?
So Mr. Holder, it's good morning to you as well. And I will tell you, we completed a project not too terribly long ago that fit the exact description of what you're talking about. The city of Newberry was honored in 2021 as the first municipal fiber city in the state of South Carolina. And what that meant was we took fiber to every home and business in the city of Newberry to deliver high-speed internet. One of the challenges Newberry had is we're a bit rural. We're a town of 10,000 people, but we're also utility providers. So we provide electric, water, sewer, and gas to the entire city. And one of the challenges we had was we did not have good high-speed internet. And what does that mean for a community? What that means any longer, because you can go just about to any community that's not rural and get high-speed internet. So we were being threatened with losing residents because they needed, let's say they were running a business from home, especially during COVID. That became a huge challenge. If you didn't have a certain speed of internet, you run the risk of losing residents. On economic development, a lot of times if you don't have high-speed internet access, you are losing out on a client or a possible customer before you ever even know it because they've crossed you off the list because you weren't able to provide this service. So one of the challenges we had here was we had approached the incumbents, Comcast and AT&T, and said, look, we're going to build a $5 million dark fiber network to bring high-speed internet to Newberry. We want you, AT&T and Comcast, to light it up. Because at the time when we first experienced this need, the state of South Carolina had a prohibition on municipals lighting their own fiber network. So we went out to try to find a partner that could help us light it. When I went to meet with Comcast and AT&T, it was me, my utility director, my public works director, all the folks that were going to be players in this thing. Comcast and AT&T laughed and they said, look, we don't partner with communities and Newberry doesn't need high-speed internet. And the bottom line was we knew that our community was worth it and we knew that to achieve this goal, there was going to have to be a lot of heavy lifting done on our end in order to get there. And not only that, now we were going to go out and have to find a partner in order to meet these goals. somebody who could light that fiber for us, since the incumbents would not do it, which didn't make a lot of sense to me because they already had a customer base here in Newberry. So we had to get city attorneys involved. We had to get our finance director involved and her staff on crunching numbers on how we made all this happen to build a $5 million fiber network. We had to get public works staff involved in order to outline and to help us encompass right of way that we were going to need in order to install this fiber. We had to get the utility involved because a lot of this fiber was going to be installed on their poles and within their conduit around town in order to make this happen. So there was a number of departments and a bunch of staff pulled together in order to make this happen. And then I was able to go out and find a partnership through WC Fiber, which was located in Abbeville, South Carolina, who had a trunk line that could get to us here in Newberry and provide that high-speed fiber network. And since that time, we have built the network. We have lit it up with WC Fiber's assistance. They offer a triple play package to our residents, which means they can get telephone, TV packages, and internet connection, all at gig speed, which is as high speed you can get anywhere in the state. And that is dedicated speed up and down. If you're familiar with fiber networks and internet speeds, it's never throttled like you would get on AT&T and Comcast. So not only did we find a partner that could light our fiber up for us, we found a better overall service for our residents and for our businesses so that they feel like they can conduct their business here in Newberry just like they could in the Greenvilles or the Columbias or the Charlestons of the state, which has put Newberry on the map. And what it's done for us is it's also helped us attract 3 new residential developments. And here in the city of Newberry, we had not had a new residential development in over 40 years. So this is going to bring 300 more houses online for the city, which obviously expands our tax base and allows the city to look to do more in the future with this added revenue. So that was a project that was very challenging to pull off, but also required a lot of staff from the city of Newberry to come together in order to meet an objective. And ultimately, we were able to do that, and we won the Municipal Association's Joseph P. Riley Innovation Award in 2021 for that project. So it's something that I'm very proud of, probably one of my bigger accomplishments here in the city of Newberry. But again, to answer your question, it was also one that required a ton of staff be pulled together. And how we did that, we talked about the common goal. We talked about, hey, a rising tide raises all ships. We knew that if we expanded the tax base, that we would have more revenue. So my finance director obviously is keen on more revenue. My public works director, who needs new garbage trucks that cost $500,600,000, is all about added revenue. My utility director, who is now going to be receiving some income based on pole attachment fees, was excited about the opportunity. The poles are already there. It's just a matter of adding that extra bit of utility to them. So again, it's about finding the common goals within each department, focusing on what can bring us all together, because at the end of the day, we all have much more in common than we do that separates us. So for me, it was about focusing on the wins and then getting them to focus on the wins and not so much the labor and the laborious part of making it happen. But hey, if we do make this happen, here's where the wins we can all experience. And they were all very encouraged by that process and that approach. And it's been a success here for us in Newberry.
Thank you.
The next question will be given by Councilmember Keating.
Good morning, Mr. DeWitt. Just as way of a little bit of introduction, my name is Cindy Keating. I'm in the 4th year of my first term on council and the 2nd year as mayor pro tem. I'm very encouraged by your statement about establishing the plan and then working the plan. That does add focus and organization to initiatives. We've had difficulty establishing actionable goals and objectives as far as high-level priorities for the town and maintaining any kind of priority or focus on actually accomplishing them. How do you go about getting that plan established? And we've done it twice. I still have never seen any report out on an objective or achievement of a goal, but other than I think the fire department. But how do you go about, with your experience, establishing those priorities and maintaining that focus of staff to actually continue to understand the importance and accomplishing those goals that have been identified?
Sure. So good morning, Mayor Pro Tem. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I think the process is an easy one. But to answer the second part of your question, that is where the challenge therein lies. So, what you need to do at the beginning of every year, or actually at the end of every fiscal year, is there needs to be a goal setting meeting. We need to have a meeting where we do, we sit there and we list our must do's, our could do's, and our should do's, or actually must do's, should do's, and could do's. And then we have to prioritize those with council going through. It's a long meeting where there's a lot of conflicting ideas and a lot of conversation to be had. And some of those goals take multiple years. Some of those goals are short-term goals. Some of those goals are long-term goals. But once it's agreed upon and we leave that meeting or meetings, however long it takes, in order to set those goals, the trick then becomes is the focus and not losing sight of that focus, and then periodical check-ins. So what I would propose is something similar that we do here in Newberry is we publish those goals for the departments. And of course, I highlight those. So if we had certain actionable goals for the fire department, maybe we highlight those in yellow and we send those to Robert. Robert gets a complete list of all the city's goals, because I think that's important. It's very hard for a team to be goal-oriented and focused if they don't know the overall mission of the city or of the town. So I think it's important that each department knows their actionable goals and how we plan to achieve those. But at the same time, they should be able to speak intelligently to all the goals of the city. And that way they are informed, and team members who are informed tend to be more dedicated and focused on achieving the goals. And then on top of that, you need to do check-ins. So we would hold staff meetings monthly, usually following a council meeting is what I would propose. And we would just say, hey, Robert, you got these 3 items that we're working on this year for council. They're actionable items that we're focused on and planning to have done by the end of the fiscal year, because we all know how budgets work. In Newberry, they're set July 1, and at June 30, you better have them done, because the money's not going to roll over unless they're capital projects or something like that, and then they're handled through separate funds. But, that's how you sort of remain focused on the goal, is great communication, an actionable plan that we've all agreed on, and then periodic check-ins, whether those be monthly or quarterly, and everybody giving updates. And then what you do is, as a manager or an administrator, you're taking notes at those meetings and you're turning around a report to council. You're saying, hey, council, here is the list of goals that we have created. Here are the actionable items that we can check off this month. And here's how we're making progress towards these goals. And it sounds like an easy process. I probably simplified it a little bit too much, because we all know that there's moving parts when you're doing things like this, and sometimes your focus can get diverted. If there's a crisis that Chief Clemens is dealing with, where all of a sudden his focus is diverted to dealing with the here and now because something has happened, then obviously we've got to be understanding of that. And how that occurs is, I need to be communicated with council and say, hey, look, I know this is an actionable goal for the fire department. Here's the monthly report. But do realize that Chief Clemens is dealing with an issue here, and this is what's going on. We may have backslid a little bit on goal orientation, but at the same time, what we're doing is important for the community. It involves us maintaining our daily operations, let's say, because at the end of the day, there are services and operations that the community has expectations are going to be delivered, and you've got to be able to deliver those every time. Like I like to say here, When people flip the switch, they want the lights to come on. When they flush the toilet, they want the waste to go away. And they don't really care about anything else in the process other than it's got to work. So I think that was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully I gave you some ideas as to how I manage goal orientation, updates, and making sure that we're remaining focused on what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. I have just a little bit of a follow-up.
Yes,
You know,
ma'am.
we are very reactionary, and that's just been our mode of operation. And we've been trying over the past several years to become much more proactive instead of reactive, which is a challenge, you know, implementing the change and so forth. But as a result, we get distracted with the minutia of everyday life. We have so many things come up or raised as an issue that may not have, you know, real significance. Excuse me. But it also takes away time. So how do you tell someone, no, it's not time to address that particular issue? We have other priorities that we need to focus on.
So is this an issue that would affect the delivery of daily services, or is this a longer term type issue? Or are they multiple things?
Yeah, there are multiple things, you know, a lot of them are, you know, questions about how did we get to where we are today, or, you know, some obscure, you know, why don't we fix this? Why don't we change this? You know, this ordinance isn't particularly right. We need to update it. We need to change it. You know, one of the things we tried to do is set a priority list of updating our ordinances, because many of them are well outdated. But again, that was never focused on, that was never created, that plan of doing that. So now we keep getting these knee-jerk reactions. We had this one event, oh my God, this has to be band-aided and changed. And it's just a distraction that its time hasn't really come yet.
Sure, so we deal with some of those same issues, and if it's an issue that can be handled within the course of business, without creating a bunch of distraction, of course, those are items that we're gonna tackle relatively quickly and keep moving. If it's an ordinance issue, I do a lot of work with our city attorney here, looking to update various ordinances. You'll see on our monthly agendas here in Newberry, quite often we are updating ordinances because of issues that have arisen with outdated ordinances. So that's something that, you know, within the course of business, I have to meet with the city attorney and bring things to council. And of course, the key there is to communicate early. And we may have an issue with an ordinance that takes a quarter to come up with revisions to put before council. But as long as all the council is agreeing that, hey, this is gonna take some time to fix, and that there's gonna be, at the end of the day, there's gonna be something that comes before us that can handle these issues moving forward. And we can stress to the community that we're trying to do something to deal with these things. I found that to be a good process and things that people can understand. The bigger picture things that sort of distract you from the ultimate goals that you've set at the beginning of the year, I think you have to sit down with that council member and say, you know, I hear what you're saying. I understand that it's a concern. I think we should bring these concerns to our goal setting meetings at the end of each fiscal year so that we can determine whether or not this will be a priority for us moving forward. And as long as everybody is in agreement and that the time and the resources are there to handle those issues, then we will move forward with making sure that those issues get addressed. But again, it's about creating a plan, everybody agreeing to stick with the plan. Those knee-jerk reactions are going to happen. Sometimes they can be handled within the course of business. And if that's the case, then you tackle those and you keep moving. But if it's something that's more longer term and wider spreading and a bigger effect, then we need to reconvene at an appropriate time. And we need to determine what the best course of action is. And if that's one of the goals, that would make the list for the following year in order to make sure that we achieve those things. So again, it's about creating a plan, everybody agreeing to stick with the plan, and then creating actionable items in order to achieve those goals.
Thank you.
All right, the next question will be given by Councilmember Kinkin.
Good morning, Mr. DeWitt. I'm Bill Kinkin, and my question, based on exit interviews conducted with past employees, we have received criticism about council members having too much involvement in day-to-day activities and operations of departments and staff to the point of interference. This has created disagreement and dissension at Town Hall. As administrator, how would you handle situations like this? Are there some examples of your approach that you can share?
So good morning, pleasure to meet you. Here's what I can tell you. So here in the city of Newberry, we have a council manager form of government, and the code of laws in South Carolina actually prohibit council interaction with staff in this form of government. So the beauty of what I do here in Newberry is everything has to funnel through the manager in order to make its way through staff. And my council is very respectful of that, even though that we'll be parting ways in June. My council still, if there's something that has come up, they don't never go directly to a department head. They come to my office, they schedule a meeting, and we sit down and we talk through it. And then I funnel that back through to the department to make sure that those concerns or whatever they're needing to be addressed gets handled. And again, unless it's a bigger picture issue that affects one of the goals that council has set for the year, then I politely ask the council member, hey, that's something that needs to be held until our yearly meeting. But I would say there is, if we could all come to an understanding that I understand that the form of government, it allows for council members in your form of government to have direct interaction with staff and to give directives and work orders and things like that to staff. What I would ask staff to do is, if they were approached with some of those things, that they come to me and let me be a conduit for them in order to achieve that goal or that task, or to let them know that, hey, you know, that's something that really is a bigger picture item and something that I need to bring back to council in order to handle that appropriately. So I know that can be a challenge. I've talked with a few folks that are very familiar with Surfside, and I've heard some of that same feedback. So one of my good friends is Fox Simon there in Myrtle Beach. He's the city manager of Myrtle Beach, and I don't know if that's a bad word there in Surfside or not, but I've got some built-in relationships there on the coast. And he had sort of given me that heads up that, hey, you know, sometimes council can be very involved in the day-to-day operations there at Surfside. So again, I think through great communication, which I feel like is a strong suit of mine, I think through proper goal setting and agreements that we all have a focus on what we've agreed to helps with that. And then getting my staff to have trust in me and making sure they're communicative on, hey, these are the things that I'm being approached with from council. How do we handle these? And help it, you know, allowing me to help guide them through that process. I think if those things take place, it cuts down a lot on the confusion, the inability to complete tasks and goals, and ultimately the frustration level of staff. So again, it's about trust building, it's about building the right team, and then it's about great communication.
Thank you.
The next question will be given by Councilmember Cracklaw.
Good morning, Mr. DeWitt. My question is, what will your first steps be upon assuming responsibility in this position? And what would you hope to accomplish in the first year?
So given the timing, do y'all run a July 1 to June budget there at Surfside?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm familiar with. So ultimately, you all would have set a budget for the following year by the time that I arrive. So I would want to, obviously, one of my first priorities is going to be to meet council. I want to sit down with each of you and sort of get a feel for the lay of the land, where your heads are at, what some of your concerns are, what some of the challenges are in the coming year. But ultimately, I want to spend an inordinate amount of time at first with the finance director, making myself very familiar with the budget, the budgeting process, the goals and objectives that have been outlined within the budget, so that I can sort of set up a rough outline for this first year as to what I'm being handed, which is basically a playbook that I didn't help create. So the challenge in this first year would really be to understand the lay of the land, get to know the players, and then to ultimately have a very firm grasp on the budget and making sure that I understand the goals and objectives are to what needs to be achieved in the first year. And then sort of doing a rough goal setting meeting with the department heads to say, hey, as I understand it, based on the budget that's been presented and what's been approved, here's the lay of the land in the coming year. Here's the things that we need to achieve. Here's the list of the 10 things, and here's the actionable items that we all need to be aware of in order to achieve these things that were outlined in the budget. So it's going to be a lot of budget education. It's going to be getting to know council and sort of hearing some of those concerns and things that they would like to see in the next year take place. And then, of course, it sounds like finishing off that pier project is a big priority. So I'm going to want to dig into the budget and see, based on what I've talked with you all about, hey, what are the things that you feel like haven't been achieved at the pier? And then how was that reflective in the budget that has been put together in order to achieve those items that need to be checked off in order to get that project wrapped up for you? Because I know that's something that the community is expressing concern over, something that the local media is reporting on quite frequently, and something that I think, again, at the end of the day, if you can put a bow on that thing, council members' lives become a lot less cantankerous as far as people sticking cameras in your face and asking questions, and citizens being upset about that project still not getting completed. So I hope that answered the question. I'd be happy to answer any follow-ups.
No, that's good.
That you may have.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have a follow-up. You're also going to be walking into the end of a process of a 10-year plan. We're supposed to wrap it up in August. How would that affect your first 100 days?
Well, I would need to dig into that. Can I answer a question by asking a question? If there's 10 items in that 10-year plan, how many does council feel like have been achieved at this point? Are you getting close, or are you still way off?
We're still way off. We haven't seen the new plan.
Okay.
And by the way, my name's Bill Kinkin. You can't see me, but anyway. So I just wondered how you would handle a plan that's in the process and you walk right in the middle of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we need to get our arms around. And sometimes plans that were sent 10 years ago aren't the same, don't involve the same focus and desire as they may have 10 years ago. And that's why I think yearly goal setting, it's important to have a long-term vision. It's important to have a long-term plan, but you need to revisit those goals and say, 10 years ago, this was a priority and this was a necessity. But now I feel like this is no longer a priority, or this is no longer a necessity. And it's okay that those priorities and the focus change over a 10-year period. It's going to, because what else has happened in that 10-year period? You've had change in staff. You've had crises come up with the washout of the pier. You've had budgetary strains on getting that thing rebuilt and doing other projects around town that were a necessity in keeping to deliver services. You've had a change in your council. I've run it up, and I know that there has been changeover in council over that period. So priorities change. So it's going to be about sitting down with you all and deciding as a group that, hey, 10 years ago, here's where our focus was. Here's where we are on these items. Is this still where we need to be focused? Are these still obtainable goals? Or do we need to change course and change direction? And what I would encourage you all is, again, long-term goals are great. And sometimes they're very achievable, and other times they're not. Is to set something shorter term. You need to have yearly goals, you need to have 3-year goals, you need to have 5-year goals. And 10-year goals, those are really far out there. It's hard to project where your community is going to be in 10 years. Trust me, even in Newberry, things have changed. Since I took office in 2016, things have changed drastically on where the city is focused because of the things that we have done through the years to sort of change the trajectory of the community. So I think it's important for council to be willing to sit down and have those tough conversations, and to sometimes say, you know what, 10 years ago that was important, but right now these are the important things, and these are the things that we need to focus on. And as long as everybody can sit down and be honest with ourselves and take a good hard look at things, then I think, changing direction is not always a bad course of action. It's just got to be something that everybody can agree to, which at the end of the day is the tough part. But I think if we all get into the room, we can agree to disagree at some points, but also ultimately agree on the things that are most important to the community. And I think at the end of the day, you'll be able to achieve the goals that you're looking to achieve.
Thank you.
This is Paul Holder. I'm going to ask the next question. What's your municipal finance experience, and what role have you played in preparation of the budget? And in budgets that you have prepared or assisted in the preparation, how do you communicate the effectiveness of these services delivered?
I'm sorry, I had trouble. I heard there was a budget-related question on preparation, but I couldn't make out a lot of that question. Would you mind repeating that for me, please?
Mr. DeWitt, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will, Mr. Holder's sitting a little bit far away, so I'll reread the question. So the question is this: what is your municipal fire or finance experience, and what role have you played in the preparation of the budget? In budgets that you have prepared or assisted in the preparation, how do you communicate the effectiveness of service delivery?
Okay. So I have been preparing the budget at the city of Newberry since 2016. And our budget, and that's hand in hand with the finance director and our department heads. So the process in Newberry is around February of each year, we send out the budget to our department heads. And they each submit what their plans are for the following year. Let's say in Public Works, they need a new garbage truck, and the fire department needs a new fire truck, and the utility department needs bucket trucks. Well, then me and the finance director sort of sift through those things. We'll sit down with the department heads, and we will prioritize the needs. We will do a capital budget assessment to see what the available funding looks like. And we ultimately know, based on revenue projections for the following year, what kind of budget we're looking at moving into that next fiscal year. So I have been very hands-on since 2016 with the step-by-step process and getting the budget put together and presented to council. And then ultimately, the service delivery is something that is, of course, included in the budget. You got to have the personnel in order to deliver the services. You have to have the equipment in order to deliver the services. And those are things that we have to focus on each and every quarter. I sit down with the finance director. We go through the numbers. We say, hey, look, actually every month we give projections to council. We're like, look, at this point in the budget, we should be 60% of the way through this line item, or we should be 40% of the way through this line item based on historical timelines. So we're given monthly updated council meetings as to budget projections and how they are aligning with the actual expenditures. And that's something you gotta do monthly because you can't wait quarterly or, halfway through the year to do that, or you're gonna be behind the 8 ball if you haven't gotten closer to that objective or that service delivery. So, as far as how active have I been? I've been very active. It's the role of the manager, the administrator, to be the fiduciary of the budgetary items. And how do I communicate that? We produce a report that tells council, hey, we should be 50% of the way through this line item based on expenditures and revenues. And we should be this close to, making sure that that service is being delivered. So, in that trash service, for instance, we know every week we've got to get around and get the trash picked up here in Newberry. Those are things that if I don't have the personnel on the trucks or I don't have the equipment in the trucks in order to do that service, we're going to look bad. So that's part of that budget process to making sure that, hey, next year we need a commercial front loader. It's going to be $500,000. We have to go to the capital budget and make sure that we have that money appropriated. Now, what does that mean for the fire chief? I know Chief Clemens is probably leaning in on this. It may mean that, hey, trash service is one of those priorities, and forgive me for not, maybe you contract that out there in Surfside, it's a contractor issue. But in Newberry, we deliver that service. And that $500,000 to $600,000 trash truck may mean that Chief Clemens has to put a little bit more money into the care and maintenance of that big fire truck that he really would love to replace. But instead of FY24, we're going to be looking at FY25, because at the end of the day, if I can't get the trash picked up, that cuts into the revenues, and ultimately the revenues drive capital expenditures in the following year. And if you want that new fire truck, we're going to have to make sure that we're delivering the trash service that we promised to the community. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and you got to balance those expectations. And I've found with staff members, if you were upfront and honest and direct, and don't promise people the moon, don't promise people things that at the end of the day you can't deliver, but be open and honest and very direct and straightforward about, hey, it's like my kids, right? They have a list of things. My son is turning 10 at the end of this month, and his birthday list has changed a good 20 times. So tear the list up and make a new one. And I had to tell him the other day, look, at some point we're going to get to a point where the list making has to stop. The rubber's got to meet the road, and we're going to sort of finalize this thing, and that's how it's going to be. And we're going to move forward in that direction. And I need you to be on board and not be a stinker for your mom, because you're not going to get everything that you want. But we're going to make sure you get what you need in order to deliver. And again, I'm going back to city and not so much my son, but be able to deliver those services. So I would never ask anybody on my staff to open a door and not give them the keys in order to do so. So it's important as a manager, as an administrator, to manage expectations and manage the budget very carefully in order to achieve the goals and the objectives and the service delivery that the community expects.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for the 7 questions that we had for you. And now, if any council member has a follow-up question.
I have a follow-up. This is Paul Owner. You stated that your contract's up July 1 with Newberry.
Correct.
Is this saying you cannot start the new job until then, or when are you going to be available to start a new job?
So yes, my contract is June 30, and I do have a severance with the city that would require me to give 2 months' notice. So at this point, it being the middle of April almost, yeah, it would be close to June 30 before I could get there. But again, I'm an ICMA member. I'm somebody who, once I commit to you and I give you a commitment, I'm not somebody who's gonna change directions on you. And I would give the city of Surfside the same respect and commitment if I were to come there. There would be a contract that I would expect that the city of Surfside would agree to in order to obtain my services. But again, yes, it would be close to June 30, if not June 30, before I could depart Newberry and head that way.
Thank you.
This is Mayor Helger again, and my question is that in January, they made the decision not to renew your contract. Can you tell us the reasoning in that?
Sure. So I explained to you that I have 3 children, and they are the joy of my life. Me and my wife have been married 20 years this June. My daughter's 14, my middle son is 10, and my youngest is 9. And they are active, and I tell everybody all the time, fortunately, they are smart like their mom. So we've been very blessed with them academically. The problem I've had here in Newberry is that the schools have not been able to challenge my children. And what I mean by that is the teachers here in Newberry are teaching to the bottom half of the class because they have a lot of kids failing. And there's No Child Left Behind and all these other initiatives that the school district is trying to meet in order to maintain their state accreditation and all those things that they have to do. And I went to the superintendent, I went to their teachers, and I said, look, you're giving my kids assignments, they're finishing them in 10 minutes, and they sit there for half of the day with absolutely nothing to do, and I only have one shot at educating my kids, and I need them to be challenged. Is there more that you can do? And they basically said, look, Mr. DeWitt, we have to bring the lower half of this classroom up in order to achieve our objectives. And you can tell by the conversation we have, I understand objectives, I understand goal attainment, but I also have objectives and goal attainments for my family. So after experiencing that for 2 years, we pulled my daughter out of the local public school, and we enrolled her into Newberry Academy, which is a tuition-based school. Cost me and my wife a little over $10,000 a year to send her there, but we thought, hey, at the end of the day, if it costs us $35,000 a year to send our kids to a better academic program here locally, that's a good option. So we tried that out for 2 years. And unfortunately, uncertified teachers at the academy, textbooks that I swear when I went to school were the same textbooks I used. Again, the academic achievement of that school just wasn't where me and my wife would like to see it. And to give you some background, my wife is an educator as well, so she's also a school teacher, had been a school teacher until I took the job at the city of Newberry, and then she started to be at home with our children to make sure they were getting the attention that they needed, because she realized and I realized that the time I spent at the city would be taken away from the time that I could spend with them at home working on academic things. So after about 4 years of sort of struggling and trying to figure out what the best move was for our family, and to digress a little bit, during that time, my wife lost 3 family members, and her father, her stepmom, and her grandmother, all who left her a substantial amount of money. And we decided as a family that we needed to purchase a piece of property in Lexington County, which is the adjoining county to Newberry, in order to send our kids to the Lexington County schools. They're some of the best schools in the state. So that became my wife's primary address, and we started to send our kids to Lexington County schools about 2 years ago. The issue with that, so during COVID, we lost 2 of our senior most council members to COVID, unfortunately. And God rest their souls, they were great people. We did, however, get 2 members on council who are good people, and they want well for the community, but they work for the school district. And they were getting asked questions about why are the DeWitt kids not going to Newberry County schools. And when they came to me, they said, look, what do we tell these residents about your kids not going to Newberry County schools? I reminded them that we have an agreement in place, and I supplied them with the agreement. And I said, look, let's go through the things that city council expects of the manager. City council expects of the manager that he has a home in Newberry, which I do. I have never not lived in Newberry. My residency is here in Newberry to this day. There's a number of other expectations, but none of them say that the city council expects that the city manager's kids remain in Newberry County School District. Now I said, now if there was something that violated my agreement with you all, or you all were displeased with, that was outlined in my contract, this is a conversation that we can more than definitely have. If it's performance-based, I'm somehow not meeting the expectations of what you all have laid out for me to achieve, let's have that discussion. But when you start to try and dictate to me how I raise my children, that becomes a different conversation and something that we disagreed on heavily. And unfortunately, due to that disagreement, they came to me in January, as the mayor outlined, and said, hey, look, you know, we're going to decide to go in a different direction at the end of your contract. I can supply you all with a glowing recommendation from the mayor, a written letter of recommendation. I can send you all when we hang up here. I have a great relationship with my council. And honestly, this is one of the few things that we have sort of come to a head on that I just, at the end of the day, I'm not gonna sacrifice their educational opportunities for my own professional attainment. What kind of father would I be if I didn't do what's best for my children? So that's where we sort of came to an impasse, and is the reason for them not renewing my contract in June. I respect all of them. I know they had a tough decision to make, and I wish Newberry nothing but the very best. I'm working up until the day I leave to make sure that I have set Newberry up to be successful for as many years as possible after my departure. And hopefully the person they replace me with has a very good understanding of the educational deficiencies in Newberry if they have children, because that too will become a challenge for Newberry when they're looking to hire somebody to replace me. I have a feeling that they're not going to find somebody who is younger that has children in school. They're going to have to maybe find somebody who's closer to retirement age and has, you know, their kids have grown up and left the house. But that's a challenge that they're going to have to figure out moving forward.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your candidness in that.
Absolutely.
And with that, that seems to answer all the questions that we have from the council, and we appreciate your participation today. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just one more thing. You have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else that we may not have asked that you would like to share?
Well, I don't think 5 minutes gives us enough time to sort of delve into some of the questions that I have on, you know, what are some of your staffing deficiencies? What are some of the major challenges that I can't read about in the newspaper or seen in the video clips from the news organizations around that area? Those are things that at the end of the day, if you all extend an offer to me, that I would like to have more of a conversation about. But at this time, I would like to tell you all that it's been a pleasure. I wish I could have been there. Again, my kids are all quarantined. They're in the back here. This is, I'm sitting in my dining room right now. The living room's behind me, but I've asked them all to please stay in their bedrooms because at the end, I'm hoping in 5 days that I test negatively. But again, you know, we want to make sure that we're not spreading COVID anywhere in Newberry, if at all possible. So if we hang up here and somebody has a follow-up question, Chief Clemens has my cell phone. I'm only a phone call away, so I greatly appreciate everyone's time. And again, I wish I could have been there to meet you in person, but it's been good to meet you virtually.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, I got one thing I want to say to you. I'm ex-school board member and chairman of the school board for years. And I really do applaud your decision which you make for your children. And that is something that I support you 110% on, is parents' choice. And you-
Well, I appreciate
that's
you
your
saying
choice.
that.
Private
It means a
subject,
lot to
private
me.
subject. That's a private subject, and I think you made the right choice.
Well, thank you. And if I had to do it again tomorrow, again, what kind of father would I be if I didn't put my children first and their educational opportunities? We get one shot at educating our kids, and if I taught them that they could settle for mediocrity, I think I would set them up for failure for the rest of their lives. So
Very right.
I refuse to do that, and I appreciate what you said. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you very much for your interview today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. DeWitt, you still hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
So thank you again, and that's an awesome job. I was expecting a kid to run through the door as council was talking to you, so kudos to you, sir. So just very quickly, I will get in touch with you. If not later today, I will touch base with you tomorrow, just to kind of talk a little bit about next steps. Obviously, council is talking with a few other folks, so from a process perspective, our goal, council's goal is to at least have a finalist or in a primary and a secondary, and then we're gonna go from there with the decision being made, as quick as we possibly can. So, I'll be following up with you.
Hey, that sounds great. Just to give you a heads up, Chief, my mobile's gonna be the best way to reach me. Next week, I told you last time we were together, we have a family vacation planned for Florida. Next week, so I'll be out of pocket as far as email and things are concerned, but if you need to reach me on my mobile, I will have that with me and able to talk as much as possible if need be.
Okay, all right, thank you so much, sir. You have a great rest of the day.
You all as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the technology worked.
So our next interview is at what time?
12:30.
We'll take a break and we'll resume at 12:25.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. We have a list of questions, which there are 7 questions that we're going to ask you today during the interview. They'll be given by different council members.
Okay.
So let me get those together and we will start here in just a minute.
And other than that, the mayor pretty much covered it. The interview will be an hour.
Okay. I'm sure I can talk that long.
But just relax.
Yeah.
Can't find my questions. All right, starting right out, the first question will be given by Council Member Michael Drake.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Terry.
I'm Michael Drake, council member, and glad to have you. How are you interested in working for Surfside Beach? How did you come about that? And how has your experience and leadership style helped to achieve the expectations of council, department heads, employees, and other community members? How do you see that happening?
Okay. Well, first, Surfside. I grew up about an hour and a half from here, so I'm very familiar with Surfside. I was just telling your fireman that graciously walked me over that I pretty much grew up in Ocean Lakes when I was little. So, back before Hugo and everything was small and that kind of thing. I've lived here, well, I don't live here now, but I have lived here 8 summers and 3-4 years after college. Always loved the area. My family's still an hour and a half from here. I am looking to relocate here and just settle down. Now, my leadership style, what was the second part of that question?
Your leadership style, as far as your expectations of council. What's your expectation of council, the department heads, employees, and the community, as far as you being in that position? Do you think that?
Well, I would have a high expectation of both council and department heads. I feel like, I've met your department heads. I feel like they are very good at what they do. They know their rules and regulations. My expectation from council would be to obviously do what's best for the community, to actually communicate with the constituents and ask questions when they don't know what the answer to the question is. There are policies and procedures in place, and it's always good to educate yourself on those.
And a follow-up question on it. In your time of leadership, do you have scenarios where difficult employees or difficult staff members that you've had to work with, and how you overcome problems with them, or how do you handle that? How do you go about handling a difficult employee or a difficult person that doesn't seem to be leading in the way they need to be leading and getting the job done?
Right.
With our pattern or path of where we want to go.
Okay. And it is very important that you do have a pattern or path when it comes to that. I've had difficult employees before. I've had difficult council members before, and I've had difficult department heads before. It's always good to find out what the problem is, and then from there you have to plan strategically what it is that needs to happen and how you can get that person to do what you need them to do. You're not always going to have somebody that automatically does that, and sometimes you do need to just politely encourage them to go in the right direction.
Thank you.
What do you perceive to be the administrator's role in dealing with the council? And how do you view the role in council in dealing with the administrator and department heads?
I feel like the administrator's job would be a buffer between the departments and the council. I would want to take all the responsibility of the department heads and what they are doing, how they are operating every day. And of course, day-to-day operations would also be a responsibility of the administrator. I feel like you just need to have that communication where you can come to either or and decide what the problem or positive aspect of whatever it is that's going on is. And of course, different scenarios require different ways of looking at things, but I would definitely be the buffer, and I would expect city council to come to me if there were any problems with particular departments, and then we could work it out and find out, actually get to the bottom of what the real issue is and how it can be changed.
All right, thank you. Mr. Holder.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Holder, and tell us about a time that you had a major task or project that you needed a lot of support from your staff. How did you get the support? How did you motivate them? And what were the results?
I like to motivate people. I think it's very important to encourage people, and specifically let them know what they're doing right, especially when they're doing things right. I've had many projects in the past that I've had to work with every department there is, whether it's utilities or public works, utility billing, anybody. There's lots of projects that I've had to work with, and I'm never afraid to ask for help. And I always appreciate others' input on projects, because sometimes somebody's idea may be a little bit better than mine, and just whatever it takes to get it done efficiently.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. My name is Cindy Keating. Just by way of introduction, I'm in my final year of my first term on council and my second year as mayor pro tem. So, we have had some difficulty establishing some actionable goals and objectives and maintaining the focus toward actually completing something. So what would be your experience in establishing priorities, whether it's short or long term, and maintaining that focus to actually achieve the goal?
goals can be achievable no matter how hard they are, for one. For two, you really have to think about what those goals are and how you can work with everybody to accomplish those goals. Achievement is always, sorry, my voice is leaving me. I think that when you communicate with others, it always helps. Projects don't always go as you plan them to go. And there are always people who are either individually involved or from the inside or the outside, and you have to really think about what the total good would be, what's better for everybody involved, whether it's the stakeholders or your constituents or the council members or the department heads. You have to take all of that into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
That'd be me. Good afternoon, I'm Bill Kinkin, and I'm second year in council. Based on exit interviews conducted with past employees, we've received criticism about council members having too much involvement in day-to-day activities and operations of departments and staff to the point of being interference. This has created disagreements and dissension at town hall. As the administrator, how would you handle situations like this? Are there some examples of your approach that you can share?
This is not the case with just Surfside. This is the case with every council and every city or municipality that I've dealt with. There are always going to be these complaints. However, you know, if I did have a complaint that the council's too involved or they're going directly to the department heads, I would prefer that they came to me first and then we could work it out from there. And I think that, I've just lost my train of thought. What was that last part of that question again?
Are there some examples of your approach that you can share? In other words, the first part of it is, as the administrator, how would you handle situations like that? And that's the interference with council with staff. And then there's examples of your approach.
Okay. Interference with staff would have to be a really large problem. Sometimes council members do tend to get a little more involved than they should. Sometimes they think that maybe their idea would be a little bit better than what the actual policy or procedure states. Now, with that said, they're in place for a reason. If they can be changed, that too can be looked at in a different way. But you know, like I said, different scenarios or different responsibilities, but I'm pretty good at finding a new way to do something, because even though you did it this way forever and ever, you know, there's always another way that can be done. But I've dealt with that quite a bit, and I've always had pretty successful turnout with, you know, either the council member understanding more of what it is that they're trying to relate to the department head or vice versa. So.
Okay.
I'm Laverne Frecklot, and welcome. My question is, what will your first steps be upon assuming responsibility in the position? And what would you hope to accomplish in your first year?
Well, the first step that I would do would be to get acquainted with all the departments and find out what the order of operations are here for Surfside. It is very important to come in and to blend in rather than just go in and figure out, you know, you need to do it this way, this way, this way, because some things that you're doing may be working and some things that you're doing, in my opinion, may not be working. So it is important to actually get in the hang of things and find out what's going on and talk to each department head. You know, spend a little time in each of the departments to find out what their weaknesses are, what their positives are. So, and your second part of that question, I'm sorry.
What would you hope to accomplish?
Well, I would hope to accomplish a good morale with everybody. That's really important to have in both council and employees. Operations should be running smoothly. You should have good budgets. You should have, you should be following your policies and procedures. I'm in the situation now where I ask, well, where's that written in the policy? Oh, that's just the way we've always done it. Well, I need to know a little bit more than that. We got to have this in writing. So let's do it this way instead of doing it this way, and then we'll go from there to figure out which way is better. So I just, daily operations need to run smoothly.
And I'll be asking the next one. What is your municipal finance experience, and what role have you played in getting it prepared for the budget? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My experience with municipal finance is that I've, gone from being the head of the department for my financial budget, doing my budget, making sure that it stays in budget and it aligns with everything in place. Currently, I am a city administrator and I am working on our budget now to make sure that it is balanced and that it is in place. I think that, that is one thing that I am right now learning more than I had before, because this is a position that I have where I've actually been responsible for the entire budget. So usually, I've done $30 million worth of projects, grant funded projects that I've had to administer, prepare for, and that kind of thing, and make sure those numbers are lining up. I do tend to be on the less expensive side, because I like to try to make that money last and go as far as it can. But with finance and budget process, I'm still learning.
Okay. How do you communicate the effectiveness of what the service that you're doing with the budget?
How do I communicate the effectiveness?
Yes, of the services.
Okay. Without having a budget in place and out having it in writing and something to follow, it's often easy to get sidetracked. I've worked before where you've had administrators or other department heads actually spend money that wasn't there and, expect to go forward with things that are happening. Well, it's really important to stay on track. You have to encourage everybody to know exactly what they have and to be aware of what their department is doing and what their responsibility is of that department and how that finance is going to be able to help either continue their goals, to continue to reach their goals, or they're going to end up failing. So it is really important to be able to communicate your finances and how everything is connected to one or the other.
Okay.
Well, that's the end of the 7 questions.
Okay.
Let me ask you a follow-up question about the comprehensive plan. Give me some examples of your experience in helping formulate a comprehensive plan, because we're in the process of doing that right now.
Okay. I have done about, let's see, you do it every 5 years. I've been in municipal government for 20 years. Well, you have to update every 5, but you completely you have to review it every 5.
We're in our 10.
Yeah, okay. You redo it in 10 years and you update every 5. I've done that about 4 times, I guess. So I'm very familiar with that project and what it entails and how it differs from a strategic plan versus a comprehensive plan, and what your goals and objectives are and your land use and that kind of thing. So I am familiar with comprehensive plans.
And I see by your past that you were a manager of planning and zoning.
I was.
And do you have any certifications in that?
I don't. Mainly because where I was, I thought I would end up there forever. And, but I wasn't your normal planner. I was more of a manager of all sorts. I did everything from animal control to code enforcement, from building officials to, zoning ordinances. I did all of the ordinances for the city. So I have a really good idea of how to find those state laws and how to put them into effect. So, but no certifications. I was a floodplain manager. I did all the disaster hazard mitigation plans, that kind of thing. So.
Mr. Mayor, I have a follow-up question on one that was asked earlier. You have 7 council people up here. We have 7 different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
If we come in here one day and all of us give you a different opinion, how would you go about working that focus to get it to where we need to be on a goal out of that 7? Because it happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, your procedure of how to work with 7 different people.
Well, one thing is important is transparency. And of course, you have to keep remembering what the goal is. You have to encourage those to be a little more open-minded to the others. Now, with different opinions, of course, you're all one person. You need 3 others, 4 others to actually change something. So, and that's where communication comes in too. And I always try to encourage them. You have to think about what's best for the stakeholders. You have to think about what's best for your constituents, and you have to think about what's best for the town in general. And you can put all those into a hat and draw them, but you're never going to get the most perfect one just by drawing it out. So you're going to have to come to some conclusion and some agreements. So.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I just have one. You're relatively new to the position of the administrator. What's been your biggest challenge so far?
My biggest challenge so far are the policies and procedures that aren't in place. Of course, I was told before I even started, you're going to have to do an employee handbook. You're going to have to do this and do that. And I'm like, is that not in place anymore? And of course, where I am now, I have a lot of long-termers, which is great because they know exactly what they're supposed to do. But, like I said before, you tell me this person's supposed to get a raise after they take their test because they've gotten their license. Well, where does it say that? And how do you determine what the raise is? So all of that stuff, that's probably my biggest, the most difficult situation that I'm having to deal with now is actually having our employees to have a policy written down so you can go with what's written down in the policy.
Do you have an HR organization or person, or
No.
so you rely on just tribal knowledge?
I do.
An ASC?
Yeah, I use municipal association a lot. If I have, I use our PD Council of Governments, our municipal association. I always like to reach out to other towns and cities to see what they're doing as well. And then from experience and working with other ones, I always go to them first, obviously. But, like I said before, I don't have a problem with asking questions and asking for help. So a lot of times the municipal association is where you should go and actually get that determination from them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, capital budgets, how big of a capital project have you been in charge of?
Capital budgets over the years, I guess the biggest projects, I've done several, but the biggest projects that I've been involved in are complete downtown renovations. I've also done large utility projects with water and sewer extensions and that kind of thing. So, currently, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Johnsonville, but we are in the process of reopening the Wellman Golf Club. So that's also been something that I'm having to go back and figure out what they did and how they did it and why they did it, and how I can make it better.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, I have a follow-up question too. Since we've asked you these questions, are there anything else that you'd like to present to council that we maybe don't know about you, or that you'd like to express to this council on how you feel like you could handle this? I'm sure you researched Surfside, you know a little bit about us. How would you handle working for Surfside Beach?
I appreciate Surfside. I am very familiar with Surfside, and I think that I would be a good fit for you for several different reasons. I am a team player, and I do like transparency with government, and I appreciate the fact that you guys are a very traveled to large city, but yet you have a small town atmosphere, and you like to keep it that way. So communication, and I explained to your department heads when I met with them, is really the biggest either asset you have or the thing that is going to break you. You have to make sure that is always clear communication. You always have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Even though you're not going to be on the same page, sometimes you do have to give or take a little, if that makes any sense.
When you talk about a community, our community is 1.9 miles. Okay, it's not very big. And there's not a lot of economic development here because there is no open space that hasn't been already taken. So the best we can do is improve the space that we have and the businesses that we have and try to generate more like that. So how would you work to accomplish that?
I think that Surfside does have a lot of potential, and you don't necessarily want to make it bigger, but you can make it better. One example that I can give you that I've done before is, and it's so small but yet so achievable. I took a $30,000 city match and turned that into a total downtown investment of $120,000 because I worked with the property owners and the business owners because I thought that was the most important thing to do. With that little bit of money, we did facade grants, and I ended up doing, taking that little $30,000 and we made it into $120,000 total investment, and everybody was happy. And it did make huge improvements to our downtown. So just, little things you can do to make improvements are sometimes most important.
We have facade grants also.
Okay.
Are there any other additional questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That one quick.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, it shows.
No.
Okay, just to let everybody know, the last interview that we have starts at 1:45, so that's in 45 minutes. So we are going to take a break and we'll come back at about 1:40. It's now
This conference will
1:37
now be
and I'll
recorded.
call this special town council meeting to order.
Mr. Banis, the mayor will kick things off here just in a second and kind of go over what the flow for the interview is going to be.
Okay.
And the questions and how that's going to work. I will just let you know that the interview is 1 hour long.
Okay.
And then the mayor will fill you in on all the other details. So,
That's great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
You're gonna find that we have 7 questions that we're gonna ask you. And each council member's been assigned a different question. So we're gonna go through it and we're gonna start and there'll probably be some follow-up questions and whatever. And we'll start it out with question number 1, and that'll be with Michael Drake.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how about you, Michael?
Nice to have you here.
Thank
Why are you interested in the town of Surfside Beach as being our administrator? That's number 1.
Mhm.
And number 2 is, how will your experience in leadership and style help with expectations of the council, department managers, other employees, along that line?
You'll remember the second one when I start, right?
All right, no problem.
First of all, I was the first selectman in my town in Madison, Connecticut for 4 years. The first selectman it's a strong mayor type job. So you are the CEO. I found that to be the best job I ever had in my life. I really enjoyed it. And I have since looked for other jobs in that field, non-political jobs. I didn't want to do an elected job again. I wanted to do town manager, town administrator job. I thought that would be more up my alley. The reason I'm in Surfside is because you guys had an opening 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And we came down to apply and see what the area was like, because we'd never been down here before. And stayed in Myrtle Beach for a week. And while we were here, it was during COVID, things were not very conducive to getting together. So I never actually got an interview. I believe I put my application in, but we came down here, we saw Surfside, and we said, whether we get the job or not, we want to be here. And so that's why I want to be the town administrator in Surfside, because I live here and I love it. Second question was my style of leadership.
What's your expectations of the council, department heads and employees and the community as a whole?
Mm-hmm. Well, my expectation or my hope would be cooperative relationship between and among everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, if it doesn't exist now, it doesn't mean it can't exist. It means it takes a personal style, I think, to, work with people. One of the things I think I do really well is I work one-on-one with people and I work cooperatively with groups of people. So, the opportunity for me here to work with the council would be meet with each of you individually, get to know what your goals are. Why are you a councilman here? And how can I help you do what you want to do? But how can I help the council work cooperatively to do what everybody wants to do? Because, the end game is we want what's best for Surfside Beach. It's not what our personal goals are, what we each have to have, or else we're not going to be happy. And I think my style fits perfectly into that, because I like to talk to people. I've been a salesman for 40 years. I enjoy talking with people. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy overcoming obstacles. That's one of the things that I think is going to be important in this job, is that you understand what the obstacles are, and then you meet them head on and, figure out how to fix them. And that's one of the challenges that I think I'm looking forward to and that I would really embrace.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a follow-up? Explain to us the difference between a selectman and a town manager, as you understand it.
First selectman is, it's like a mayor, okay? It's elected. So that's the big difference, is the town administrator is not elected. But I had 13 department heads that reported to me. So, that's the job I'm looking forward to, is having the department heads report to me, working with them, helping them achieve their goals, overcome the obstacles that exist now and that may come up in the future.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is, what do you perceive to be the administrator's role in dealing with the council? And how do you view the role of council in dealing with the administrator and department heads?
First of all, the administrator's role with council, my understanding is that the administrator is supposed to run the town. And that the council is supposed to do it with the council's approval. And so I see it as I said before, working with council, to find out what's important and what their goals are, but also how do I point everybody in the right direction to do what's best for Surfside Beach? So I think that's the key is that the town administrator has to run the town. He has to make the job easier for the town council, I believe. I've been to some meetings of the town council before. My first meeting ever, I came to the meeting and the administrator sat through the entire meeting and never said a word. And I thought, if he's running the town, why is he not saying anything? I noticed that the interim now has a report every meeting. I think that's fantastic. I think that's the way it should be done. I think the administration should be reporting to the council about what's going on. Council should be apprised of what the options are and only need to vote on things, not do all the deliberation unless you want to. But I've seen some of the deliberation that went on some of the issues, and I think you did an awful lot of work that should have been done by somebody else and been brought to you for completion.
Okay, as a follow-up of that, you have 7 different council members, and you have a mayor who is a weak mayor.
Right.
Okay, so all 7 council members have the same authority.
Right.
But you're going to have in your tenure as town administrator, you're going to have people coming in, individual council members coming in and tell you the way that they want it done.
Oh, sure.
And of course, it's not an individual council member's decision on how it gets done. It's council as a whole.
Right.
So how would you be able to delegate that so that does not happen, so that individuals' needs aren't met, but the needs of the council as a whole are?
I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. I know there are 7 different people, and I know some of you already, and I like what I know about the council. I also know other things about the council that need some help, and council needs some help. And I think that's where I'm a facilitator towards that. I like to work with people. If you come up against a problem where you have a 4-3 situation, somebody's going to win. And what's the right thing to happen? The right thing to happen is going to be what's best for the town. And so that's going to be my job, to convince the 4 who are wrong, if that's the case, or the 3 who are right, whatever, to get on board. When I was first selectman, they were very emphatic about trying to get unanimous votes on everything, and it was a political position, so that didn't happen very often. But we tried whenever possible, and I think that that would be a goal, is to try to find what the differences are that are keeping people apart, and work to settle them to everybody's satisfaction. It's not always going to be possible, but I think that's what needs to be done. You need to work with people. It's not an easy job. I do think it's an enjoyable job.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Holder, it's you.
Hey, Tom.
All right,
Good to see you this morning.
You too.
Tell us about a time you had a major task or project that needed a lot of support from staff. How did you get the support, and how did you motivate them, and what were the results?
Okay. I have 2 examples of that. One of them, I brought some material with me to show you. In my town in Madison, Connecticut, we were in a very, thanks, Bob. We were in a kind of a doldrums. Real estate was very slow. Connecticut is a very tough state to survive in anyway, but real estate was slow. We were looking to grow our grand list. Houses weren't selling. And we realized we needed to attract people to the town. And so I had our town planner, when I first started, I had approached him about becoming a director of our economic development committee because we didn't have a director. We had a committee, but we didn't really have anybody in town, a director who was in charge of that. And so offered him a small bump in pay, and he took over economic development. And so we started to talk about what we needed to do in town, and we tried to get people looking to our town. And it was kind of a two-pronged approach. One was to create some kind of a message that we would send out to HR companies for big corporations. We could do it electronically. We could do it by virtue of that handout you'll see. And the idea was to get people talking and thinking about coming to Madison. So I would go to New Haven, which is a bigger town, outside of our town, and they'd be trying to attract business, industry, and so I would always go to these meetings where they were bringing people in, and eventually the mayor of New Haven said to me, "Why do you keep coming to these meetings? We're trying to bring these people to New Haven." I said, "Absolutely, I understand. You want to bring them to New Haven, but I want the president of the company to come live in Madison, because that's where they should be." New Haven was a city. We were the suburb that everybody came to. So we put this together. We distributed it, and what people saw from this piece that we did was that first selectman in town was inviting them to come to town. The superintendent of schools was inviting them to come to town, check out our schools. Everybody, it was a very inviting piece that got people to come and take a look at our town. And within 6 months, we saw things turn around. We started seeing more homes sold. Had nothing to do with me being a realtor. I never sold a home when I was first selectman. But the idea was we started stimulating interest in the town. And that was a project that was me, it was my director of economic development. We had our other economic development people involved, and obviously our school department and other departments. So it was a multi-effort that turned out successful. So my second one, a lot more recent, is the business committee. When I got on the business committee, I met 6 people who really wanted to do something but didn't know what to do. And so I got to know them a little bit better, got to find out, what had gone on in the past, what was the problem with everything. And then I made it clear to people that meetings are important. We need a quorum at every meeting, so you need to come to the meetings. As they came to the meetings, they saw that we were actually starting to do things. I brought up ideas. I led by example. I have worked hard on the business committee, but it's also brought everybody along. We went out and we started just going out to meet people. We brought a flyer with us, introduced ourselves as a business committee, and said, "We just want you to know we're here. If we can help you with anything, we'd be happy to." Since I've been chair, we actually managed to get one of the facade grants worked out and got distributed to somebody, which I hadn't heard of before. We had our business with a twist a couple weeks ago, which was a big success. Everybody was very happy and had a great time going there. It was a fun event for people, and I think that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to stimulate people to enjoy their time here in Surfside, and the fact that their business is here. And I can talk a lot more about the business committee, but I won't right now.
Well, thank you. And I'll say, with that business committee, he reached out to me and I couldn't be there at night, but I was willing to be there at night. So
Yes.
it was a great thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Tom, we've had great difficulty as a council establishing goals and objectives. We have tried it every year for 3 years. We go through the process of, need to do, want to do, should do, can't do, whatever, categorizing them. And then it just falls apart. They're not embraced. They're not focused on. We don't reduce them to actionable objectives. So what is your experience in establishing priorities and achieving that focus to really establish goals and actually achieve them?
Well, I think it's difficult when you have 7 people trying to determine what the goals, the priorities should be. So, and I think that's where the town administrator needs to listen to everybody and then start to do that for the council. Because 7 people can't get together and agree on anything, I don't think. But, you know, if you have a town administrator who's going to direct the council towards what's important and come up with a list of priorities that everybody can understand and agree with. You know, they may not think number 1 should be number 1, but they may think number 1 should be in the top 3, you know? And if we could get to a point where the administrator actually does that work and then brings it to the council and makes it easy for the council to understand why things have been prioritized the way they have been, I think that's a way of achieving what you're trying to achieve with that.
Based on exit interviews from past employees, we have received criticism about how council members having too much involvement in day-to-day activities, operation of departments and staff to the point of interference. This has created disagreements and dissension at town hall. As the administrator, how would you handle situations like this? Are there some examples of your approach that you could share?
I think it's kind of a dicey thing, honestly. You know, it's not easy because the first thing I would say is council's not allowed in town hall unless it's for a meeting or, you know, for whatever, if you're a liaison, whatever. But that may not be the right answer. The right answer may be that we all get together and understand that the situation I had in Madison was this. I was a Republican. We were 3 Republicans on the board and 2 Democrats. And the 2 Democrats continually were in the Board of Finance office. They were in different offices trying to tell people what to do. Finally came to a point where I went to a meeting and I made a statement that said, you are not in charge of them, I'm in charge of them. If you want to talk to them, you need to come through me to talk to them. Because I think when it's controlled through one central point, things don't get out of hand. And it's not to say that you can never talk to people in town hall. It's to say, let's not let things get out of hand where the administrator is powerless to do anything about it because he's letting everybody come in and do whatever they want to do. It's got to be understood how things are going to work. I have no problem with having council involved as to advise, to consent, you know, whatever they need to do. But you have to let town hall run under the administrator and then be invited in as needed.
You're saying you close the doors?
I strictly did not say that, but I'm saying the doors would be not barred, but, you know, watched.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
My question is,
Sure.
Well, welcome. What will your first steps be upon assuming responsibility in the position? And what would you hope to accomplish in your first year?
That's a big question. My first steps, I'll give you a little insight where I came from. I was never I did a lot of volunteer work in my town before, but I was never on a board, like, you know, an elected board. I did a lot of other things. So when I first started, I came in very green. Didn't know anything about municipal finance, didn't know anything about a lot of things about running a municipality. But I did know people. And so the first thing I did was I went to every department head and every supervisor, wherever their office was, wherever their shop was. You know, if it was public works, I went to the shop. If it was planning and zoning, I went to their office. And I sat with them and I talked to them about what their goals were. You know, what are you trying to do? What have you been successful doing? What have you not had success doing? And how can I help? And that just got me off on a good start to understand the whole situation that I was dealing with, because every single person appreciated the fact that I went to them, I talked to them in their place and got them, you know, let them tell me what they thought they needed. Beyond that, I got involved in their budgeting. One of the things that we found out was as much as we had a finance department that paid attention to budgets, there were a lot of things that were left overlooked. we had projects that were finished, but not finished, not, shut down and finished out. And so we had money sitting in accounts left over from projects. So we went and started identifying all that. And I also started, I had a situation where projects were started and they were never finished. And I went and I said, look, this is unacceptable. We have to bring things to a close, and we have to do it on time and under budget. And that was my whole thing. And the first project that I ever got to run from start to finish, and I didn't run the project, but I oversaw the fact that it was going to be on time and under budget, was we built, we had a football, I'll call it a stadium, but it was stands, but we had two big field houses that we built and a concession stand, and it was about a $2 million project, I think. And in Connecticut, you have all these laws that drive the prices up. So if you exceed a certain price, makes it cost even more. So I had to keep it under budget. And we had football season coming up, so I had to get it done on time. And I basically met with the contractors all the time to know where they stood, because the person who had been in charge of the project was somebody who consistently didn't get things done on time. And so I kept meeting with them and letting him understand I'm not going to take it for it to be late or over budget. We can't afford it to be over budget, because once it went over budget, it was going to go way over budget. And this is a person who eventually ended up leaving our town because he didn't like the way I ran things, but I didn't like the way he ran things either. So it was him or me. But that's the way I work. I'm very fiscally conservative. I believe if you commit to something, you got to bring it in on time and under budget, and I'll do everything I can to make that happen.
I have a follow-up question for that. Being fiscally conservative, I am too. The problem that we have is that, COVID is I will say once in a lifetime thing. And the problems we're having with our supply chain, the problem we're having with everything, the cost of what we plan to do and what we implemented to do is now potentially 2-3 times more. Okay. But when we made our budget, we budgeted for this amount, and now it's this amount. So everything seems to be on the overturn as opposed to what it would be. So how would you react to that, and how would you try to make that so that we're falling back in our things? Because I mean, now, when we're talking about it, just the gas to fill our town vehicles and to fill our fire engines and our police cars is astronomical compared to what it was. And when you multiply that by all the other things, we have an economical problem that we did not have before.
Yeah, and hopefully that's a once in a lifetime thing. You're right, but I'd have to look at a specific case, and I don't mean to not answer your question, because I will answer your question, but it would be easier to look at a specific case and say, what would we do in this case? In a very general sense, I think I would have to look at what we were involved in and say, can we afford to continue to do this? Now with gasoline, I know you can't do anything, but you can buy like futures on gasoline. We used to do that in my other town. So we would buy a contract going forward and have guaranteed pricing for 6 months or whatever it might be. And we should look at something like that, because there are some ways that you can avoid some of those problems. And it may not be on gasoline right now because of the situation, but it may be on other things that we could look at and see how can we address this situation. And again, specific situations, sometimes you just have to take a look at it and say, you know what, this project has to go on hold because we can't do it. We can't do it anywhere close to what it was going to be, so we can't do it right now. If we've gotten to a certain point, we'll leave it there and come back later on, if that's appropriate. But I don't think I think it really takes being creative, looking at a situation, finding out what your options are, trying to develop new options if you don't have any good ones. I mean, that's something that you can do also. Sometimes you can find ways around problems. And I will tell you that I have not been the first selectman during COVID. So I didn't face a lot of those things. I would like to think that as they came up, I would be able to address them But, part of it also is just, that it's not just me, it's the team. If you try to do all these things yourself, you're gonna have a hard time being successful. If you bring your team in and you work with your team to help you come up with solutions to things, I think you're a lot better off. And that's what I would count on. I'm very much a team player. I'm a leader of the team, but I think you need that team behind you to bring their expertise to the table in case you don't have it. And, that's something I've always found to be very successful.
The problem that we're running into with everything that we have in this town right now, and you say that one of your main initiatives is to be on time and under budget.
Right.
Well, we're unable to meet both of those. Because of the supply chain, we're never on time, and because of the amount of money and the changes in the financial system, we're never on budget.
Right.
So, and being a 1.9 mile town, it's not like we can go generate a whole lot more income.
Right.
There's only two ways that we can generate more income, and that's to get more businesses to come in or to raise the taxes.
Right.
And that's the problem that we're running into right now.
Just to address that really quickly, I just checked with Nicole about what the business license revenue is. It's about, last fiscal year was $922,000. So we have 350 businesses that generate $922,000. We have 70 empty businesses that are generating nothing, from the business perspective. If we could fill that space, we'd bring in another $181,000. So, that's a fairly good bump in one particular aspect of how we would raise money. They're building bigger houses downtown now, in town. Those should all help increase our revenues. And they're building on empty lots now, which, we're seeing the town getting built out. All that should help bring us more revenues. And there's two sides to every coin. You've got to look at the revenues that are coming in. You've got to look at the expenses and see where you can cut whatever you can cut. And I'm not saying cut the budget, but I'm saying, where does it make sense? What can we do? Honestly, one of the things I would like to see as part of your meetings is more of a presentation from the finance director than just having her read off things. I think if people could see the numbers for themselves, put it up on the wall or hand it out or whatever, I think it'd give people an opportunity to understand better what's going on. Because everybody's facing the same thing the town's facing. Everybody has inflation as their number one problem. But I think everybody wants to say, oh, the town should be able to fix this. And maybe the town can't fix it right now. Maybe they're just in the middle of a problem that they need to figure a way out of. But I think obviously we have to try. But again, we also need to raise revenues. And I think, we have some opportunities.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to ask the next question. What is your initial finance experience, and what role have you played in preparing a budget? And in budgets that you have prepared or assisted in preparing, how do you communicate the effectiveness of service in those budgets?
So when I first started, I started on a Monday. And for the first week, I told you, I met all the employees and, just got around to seeing people and started settling into the job. When I came back the following Monday, the finance director walked into my office and said, we have a problem. Our health insurance just went up $500,000 in a $22 million budget. So, and my stated goal when I ran for office was to hold down taxes. So now, first thing is I've got an expense I can't deal with. There's nothing I can do about that right now, not in the short term. So, worked with the finance director. And by the way the budgeting process worked there was, the first selectman presented the budget in conjunction with the finance director. So, I was responsible for looking through it and saying, let's cut this, let's get rid of that, let's add this, but in the end, I was responsible for the bottom line. And so what I do is I started to do different things to try to manipulate things where we could. My goal was to hold down taxes in my first year. So I went to the board with with 5 different ideas, based on my business experience, not on my municipal finance experience. Prior first selectman, who also was a Republican, went to the budget meetings and said, don't do any of these things. He's crazy. You shouldn't do this. They ended up implementing all 5 of them. We managed to hold our budget increase down to less than 2%. And this was a budget that automatically went up by 3% every year because of raises, for employees. So, but it was a matter of going through the whole budget, meeting with everybody about their budget. We went line item by line item sometimes when we had to, for me to figure out and understand why this money was appropriated to that line item and why it was spent or why it wasn't spent. And if it wasn't spent, do you need it next year? And so, it was a way to trim things down a little bit. The longer range goal was to stop the increases in our health insurance because, back at that time it was crazy. By my 3rd year in office, we actually got a decrease in our health insurance. We had implemented policies and plans like of health and wellness kind of things. And the insurance company bought it. Our employees bought it. We had one initiative where we were trying to lose weight. And we had over 1,200 pounds. Our employees lost over 1,200 pounds over a 6-month period. And so, all this contributed to better health, better understanding. We also explained their benefit plans better. A lot of people are going to the emergency room, and that's a lot more expensive than if you go to your doctor or call your doctor or whatever. So it's a matter of educating people and understanding what drives these costs, and then going after the root cause and trying to fix it.
Thank you. Any council have any other? I've got one other one. And this is just your opportunity to disclose anything to us, your opportunity to blow your own horn. What do you want to tell us that maybe wasn't in your application, wasn't whatever? Is there anything that you want to share with us?
I brought a bunch of stuff.
Tell us about it.
Okay. We were talking before about the budgets and how you spend your money. One of the things that we had in our town was we had lousy roads, and it costs a lot of money. There were 2 ways of fixing the roads. We could mill and overlay, or we could just totally replace the road. Totally replacing the road was twice as expensive as mill and overlay. Mill and overlay, though, you had to have a good enough road that you could actually mill it and then pave over it. Because if it was crumbling, then you had to just rip it apart. So I had them go and start looking at how we're going to spend our money on those roads, because I looked around town, they were paving cul-de-sacs. All of our main roads through town were not getting paved, but they were doing favors for little people in different neighborhoods. And I thought, we really need to fix things. So this is a chart that I did. So I started in 2015, and I'll give this to Rob. Basically, and there's enough copies where everybody can share. Basically, I redirected the way we spent our money. This was no increase to our budget. It was just how we spent the money. And we started paving a lot more miles of roads. So if you look at this chart that I'm giving you, I'll let it get down to you. You guys might want to share. Yeah.
Catch basin, no.
You got the catch basin? Oh, no, you have
No,
catch basin.
catch basin.
Okay, hold, that's next. That's next. But you can see that we went from paving sometimes 1 mile or no miles a year to 9, 7, 6, and 8. And that was just redistributing the money that we were using to get the best bang for our buck. We basically paved all the thoroughfares through town so that the greater number of people benefited from the roads being paved.
So where does money come from? If you had money available to do 10, 12, whatever miles that is.
Right.
Was it just sitting in an account somewhere
We had
when you were only doing 2?
We had a CIP, capital improvement program. And so the money was accumulating in that account every year. We would fund it every year and then spend it on, according to the program. But it was looking at how we were using the money. Public Works had a budget and they felt that their budget was for the rest of the town, that they should be the piggy bank for everybody in town. And when I came in and started as first selectman, he told me that, and I said, no, your budget is for the things that we're supposed to be spending it on. And the other people's budgets are for what they're supposed to be spending it on. So we're gonna let them take care of themselves, and you're not gonna be doing favors for people all over the place. And I can tell you, the person who was in charge is the one who ended up leaving. But I was the president of Little League, and he came and helped us put a ball field in that didn't cost us anything. So the town paid for it, and it was not in their budget. But he felt that he could spend the money that way. And all I did was I just said, we're gonna go by our budget, and we're gonna use the money in our budget for what it's budgeted for.
I see.
So the next one, which is catch basin. This was a problem, which is kind of a stupid problem, but people came to me when I first came into office, and they said, we've got bushes growing out of catch basins. And they're not emptying water, because we emptied out to the Sound, just like you guys empty out to the ocean. Our whole town drained out to the Long Island Sound. And so I went to our Public Works guy again, and I said, why are we having these problems? Oh, we've got to pick up the program on this. So he started doing it slowly. And I said to him, this has to go faster, because the problem is when they've been left for 5 years, they're a lot dirtier than if you clean them every 2 years. And so when you clean them every 2 years, it's a lot cheaper the second year to clean them. And so we were able to get them all cleaned twice in the time I was in office. And so, it's a matter of determining what the priorities are and what's going to be best for the town. That was a Public Works issue that needed to be dealt with, and we dealt with it. And I've got one last thing. This is a little bit, I won't say it's snarky, but it's I am bragging a little bit here, because when I first came into town and came into that job, we were, the town was 93% residential. So we only had 7% commercial. And it's a bedroom town. It's not it's not, we don't have Route 17 going through. We did have Route 1, but Route 1 was not like Route 17. So I determined that we needed to increase our commercial, industrial, whatever you want to call it, base in some way. And if you look at this chart, it will tell you that it shows year by year growth in each of those different ranges. And if you look, residential never grew much more than 1.1% or 1% over the 4 years I was there. But if you look at commercial, in the last year, because of projects that I worked on, it grew by almost 9%. And commercial, the thing about commercial up there is you pay your property taxes on everything. You pay your property taxes on your property, but you also pay it on your equipment. And so the more equipment that you have come into a town, it's double taxation, but it's what people are used to. So the project that I think was one of my favorite was the water company had come to the town and said, we have an old water tower in the next town over. We're looking for another place to put it. We've identified a spot in Madison that would be a good spot for us. And it was in our town dump. So I said, okay, let's take a look at it. We took a drive up, looked at the piece of property. We were able to locate it in a space that was not in the way of anything in the dump. It was just, out of the way. So they said to me, we want to pay lot price for this, just like if you're building a house. I said, okay, that's fair. I didn't know how else to come up with a price for it. So we agreed on a price. I think it was like $289,000 for the lot that they needed to put this tank on. I said, but if you're going to build the tank on what we consider a residential lot or a property lot, it's not going to be equipment, it's going to be property. Because equipment, you'll depreciate over the next 10 years and it won't be worth, we won't get anything for it. But we're going to put it in as property and you're going to pay taxes to us every year. And it was $1.6 million, I think, that it cost them to build that thing. So they're still getting revenues off of that, which would be diminishing every year if we hadn't made that deal. And that was something I was pretty proud of. And just one thing to bring us up to, bring us back to Surfside. These you're gonna have to share, but, this is a project that the business committee did for Sabrina. The first 2 pages are, basically Sandy Lane. What, I was at a meeting one time and Sabrina said, you know, we're thinking about making Sandy Lane light industrial, rezoning. She said, and in the conversation, it came up that they didn't really know who was there. Who's on Sandy Lane and what do they do? So I said to them, you know, the business committee would love to take this on, and we'll go and do an inventory of whatever's over there that we can find. And so over the course of several days, we visited Sandy Lane. We met with people who were there. There were a lot of people who weren't there. We went back. You know, we just kept going back to get as much information as we could. And so we came up with a pretty good list of, you know, who's there. And we know there are vacancies over there, but this was also helpful just in terms of knowing what was there. The next thing we did was we went to Nicole and said, can you give us the information of who has a business license on Sandy Lane? And so she gave us that list, which is just the second page, the white page they have there. You've got 3 pages. 2 pages are clipped together, and there's 1 page that's by itself. So that page is all the business licenses on Sandy Lane. Well, if you look at that list of all the business licenses, if you look at the first page, the yellow at the top of the page, those people they have business licenses in Surfside, but they're not in Surfside. Okay, so you take those off of the list that Nicole gave me, and you're going to see that there's a discrepancy between how many businesses there are there and how many business licenses there are there. So I think one of the things we're going to want to do is take a look at, do some kind of an audit. And I know it's going to take personnel, it's going to take manpower, and I think the business committee would be a good ally in this. But we should start looking around town to make sure that everybody who's supposed to have a business license has a business license, because we could be losing revenues that we don't even know about.
That has been a topic of conversation in
Well, this report,
previous administrations.
this report right here identifies some of them. If they're not on Nicole's list, they don't have a license. Okay, so, you know, that's a start.
Right hand's not communicating with the left.
Well, you know, and I can't say that it's the fault of the people in town hall. It's, you know, if you don't have to get a business license, you can get away with it. I'm sure they're going to try, right? But the fact of the matter is, you know, that's our enforcement arm. We need to start being able to enforce that and figure out where we don't have coverage that we need to have coverage. So, you know, that would be, somebody asked me before, what's the first thing you want to do? And I never answered them. I apologize for that. But there's a lot of first things I want to do, because I think there's, you know, I want to get council working together better with the administrator. I want to get people in town hall working together better together with each other and with council, you know, whatever needs to be done. But I've met a lot of the people in town hall, and I think there's a lot of potential there. And I think, you know, if we run into problems, I think it's important that the town administrator understand everybody's job and whether they're doing it or not, and if they're doing it well. And if they're doing it well, great. If they're not doing it well, then you have to get on them and you have to explain to them why they're not doing it well. And if they refuse to do it well, then you have to start, there's a term for it, and it just escaped my mind, but. Documenting, well, yeah, documenting is all part of it, but it's,
Performance improvement plan.
yeah. There's a word, I'm sorry, I don't know, I just can't think of it right now. But basically you build a case, and it's discipline. You know, it's progressive discipline, that's what it is. So you basically say to the person, this is the job you're supposed to do, this is the job you're not doing, I want to see an improvement. They don't improve, you tell them again. They don't improve, you tell them again. You know, you get 3 strikes and you're out. And that's, you know, that has to be part of the weapons that you have in your quiver. Because if people don't think there's any retribution for not doing their job, you know, what's the impetus? But if you let them understand they're being held responsible for what's important, they have 2 choices. They can fix it and get better, or they can leave. And that's what I did with the person who left our town. When I first wrote him up, he said, "You're not writing me up." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, I won't tell you, I know we're on TV, so I don't want to say what his name was, but eventually, when I wrote him the second letter, that he was not complying again, he quit, because he knew it was coming. And that made things a whole lot better in our town. So, I think I said enough.
Any other follow-up questions?
Mr. Chairman, very good. I have sort of a follow-up question.
Sure.
I'm Chris Stanley. I have not met you. Several people on this thing has probably met with you and talked with you. I have not.
Correct.
But we've always had a small problem in this town of some of our council getting to our administrator. And I feel like that plays a big role in decisions that the administrator makes sometimes. In that case, how would you portray to the other council members that one council person was giving you things that you should do? Would you get a hold of the whole council and tell them, or would you send out letters to the whole council and tell them, or would you just work with that one person and do what push to do?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a hard question to answer because it's a little vague as far as, like you said, if one person told you what to do and you did that to the exclusion of the rest of the council, I don't ever see that happening. I do see getting to understand better the people that I don't understand now. And I'll give you an example of that. When I first started in Madison as first selectman, I had a guy who used to come to all the meetings of the prior first selectman. And he got up at every meeting and he said something nasty and he was always unhappy, very, just negative, very negative. And so when the first time I ran into him after I was elected, he looked at me and said, he walked away. I said, "Walter, give me a chance." And he was the kind of guy who, was not easy to convince. But over time, he would call me up and he'd say, "We got trees hanging over Railroad Avenue and they're going to fall and somebody's going to get hurt. And, they need to be looked at." And he'd call me up and say, "There's no street signs on such a street." He just had all these different things. So I finally said to him, "Walter, let's take a ride around. And you show me all the things you're talking about, and I'll tell you what I can get done and what I can't get done. But, let's take a look." So we went out on a ride around, and from that point on, he was my best friend. He would come in. He came in all the time. He's had a lot to say to me about what was going on in town. But just the fact that I listened to him and understood what his concerns were gave us a relationship that we didn't have before. And I think that's what I want to do with the council. I want people to understand I'm here to listen. I'm here to listen to everybody. I'm here to try to make things work for all you guys. I'm the person who can pull this together. But it's not going to be easy. I know it's not going to be easy, but I also think it's well worthwhile, and I think it's doable. And honestly, I'm disappointed that we've never met before because we've been in the same room several times. I appreciate you asking me that question.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Tom, I failed to ask this question, so I'm being a little unfair to you, but in years past, we used to have questions that came from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
They came up and they asked a question. They didn't get an answer that night. But in future meetings, the administrator would answer occasional question that pertained basically to the whole town. What is your feeling of that? Because we don't do that now.
Right. So my feeling is manifold, but first of all, at a town meeting, I believe it's called public comment. Okay, so when we had public comment at my meetings, it was just that. I don't answer the questions. It's public comment. You come up, you say what you want to say, and we're just listening. Okay, so I think that's the way that should be handled. However, I also had a policy of I wrote a column in the local paper every other week. And basically I just told people what was going on in town. You know, here's what we're doing. I explained my road project. I explained all these different things. I gave my competition, you know, the Democrats knew exactly what I was trying to do. So they knew how to get ahead of me and try to beat me on everything. But I wanted people to understand communication is important. I never didn't return an email. I never didn't return a phone call. You know, and I think that's the most important thing. People want to come up here and make a statement about something, complain about something, that's fine. But if they really want to get an answer, call me in my office, I'll give you an answer. Or send me an email and I'll give you an answer. And if I don't have the answer, I'll find the answer and I'll get it for you. But I think, you know, we need to start to create boundaries that are not unreasonable. It's public comment. It's not, you don't deserve an answer for this. You're just making a comment in front of the council so they know what's going on. Then it's up to the administrator to decide how he's going to deal with those things.
Okay.
I thank you very much for coming by today for your interview.
Mr. Mayor, I have one other question. Tom, on your application, you listed you have a Connecticut driver's license.
No, I got my South Carolina driver's license as soon as I got here.
Okay, well, that's why I asked, because it struck me
I
as
apologize.
odd
That's probably an oversight.
that you had
Here's my,
Connecticut as a
my
driver's
South Carolina
license.
driver's license.
I noticed
And
that too.
my concealed carry permit.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, is there anything else, Tom, you want to tell us about yourself or some of your goals?
Haven't I told you enough already?
I know, just give you that last little,
You got 15 minutes.
yeah,
we do.
15 minutes. Is there something that we haven't asked you a question on or something you think we should be focusing on or anything that comes to mind that you feel that doing this job that would be a good service for Surfside Beach?
You know, I think we've had a great conversation. I hope that I've answered all your questions. I've lived here for 2 years now, and I won't tell you that I know this town intimately or, you know, as well as you guys do. But I'm a very quick study, and I love delving into these things and getting to the root of problems and solving them. I think that's what I've done my whole life. I had my own business for 35 years. You know, and like I said, even after having my business for all those years, getting the job as first selectman and being able to direct the efforts of the town in the right direction and accomplish things, I'm very big on accomplishment. So if we, you know, once we agree on goals, we're going to go after them. We're going to figure out how to do it and we're going to get it done. Somebody was talking about, one of the things we've talked about in the business committee is beautifying 17. And, you know, short of taking the poles down, which after talking to Sandy Cooper, I believe it's about a $32 million job to get the poles taken down. So maybe that's not our first thing to do. But, you know, something that might be, this is just a wild idea that I've talked about with my wife, but that might be able to be accomplished at a lot cheaper and I think would add a lot if we put palm trees down 17, you know, down the middle. If you drive through, you know, I've been out to Palm Springs and down in Florida. When you drive down the boulevard and the palm trees are in the middle of the road, it just makes it feel like a whole different place. And, you know, I think the business committee is going to be working hard to help businesses improve their, you know, their buildings and their facades. But I just sent out the agenda for our next business committee meeting, and we're adding to our focus commercial business owners, because I think that's one of the bigger problems we have in this town is that the commercial business owners don't take care of their property. And we've talked to a lot of the people who lease from them, and they'll be, you know, look outside. They won't fix anything. They won't take it. So, you know, we're saying to them, okay, well, we have some way that we can help you do it. And I was talking to a local restaurant, and, you know, he said, I was talking to the guy next door, we're going to try to do this ourselves. I said, well, we have a grant program. Talk to us, we'll help you with it. You know, it's not going to pay for everything, but at least it's going to help you get it done. And I think we need to contact the commercial property owners and let them understand what they're doing to Surfside Beach by not keeping their property up. I'm going to do a kind of an inventory of a few of the different properties I'm talking about before our meeting and find out who owns them, to find out, you know, why why is it still vacant? Why are you having a building with 5 units and it's empty for 2 years? How does that make you any money? You know, this doesn't make any sense to me. If you're gonna have an asset, you should be getting a return on it. And I think if we start talking to these people, and again, like I said about the program we did in Madison, when the first selectman or the town administrator reaches out directly to people, there's a certain importance that's attached to that. You know, it means the highest person in town, other than the mayor, is actually paying attention to what I'm doing and wants to know what's going on. We got that first grant done because we called up the guy who where Fat Jack's is. The awning had been all ripped down, and and we said to him, "What's going on? You know, it's been like months." He said, "Well, I'm waiting for stuff." And I said, "Well, we have this program," and I offered it to him. Turned out that it wasn't a total hand in glove, but Rob saw to it that it got done because he thought it was the right thing. And the other thing I don't want people thinking is we're going to offer you this thing, but there's so many conditions you're never going to be able to meet them. It's got to be something that's doable for them. So and they look at it and they say, "Wow, this is really something that's helping me," not just, "Well, here's the town again trying to screw me."
Mr. Mayor, I got one more question.
Sure.
I noticed you're a real estate salesman.
Yes,
You got a real estate license.
I do.
If we, as a council, decide to hire you as a town administrator,
Right.
would you be willing to put them license on hold for a
Oh, yeah.
while?
I did my last time. Let me tell you, in Connecticut it was a little bit different. I just kept my license, and by keeping your license, you have to keep MLS and all that other stuff. You have to keep it all going. And so it cost me about $5,000 a year to maintain my license. But getting your license, and Connecticut is not reciprocal with South Carolina. So when I moved down here, my license went away in Connecticut, and I didn't have a license down here. So I had to go to the 90-hour course, take 90 hours of courses to get my real estate license, which I did. And so it's something that I will keep, but my company has what they call a referral status. So you can just go to where you just can only do a referral. And, I've got a lot of people up in Connecticut who know me, who know I'm here. They're thinking about coming down. I actually rented a house to somebody up in Caroline Forest around Christmas time. And they said, "We're going to rent for a year, we're going to buy," and obviously they're going to buy it from me when the time comes. Well, I'll just refer it out to I have a mentor over at my place where I work. But I never sold a house, and I never listed a house, and I never got a referral when I was first selected in Madison. That was, for me right now, it's a sideline. It's not it's not what I mainly do. It's a sideline. And so it's not that important that I apply my trade. It's just important to keep the license because it's so hard to get.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.
I think that just about does it. I thank you very much for coming in.
I thank you very much for the opportunity.
And just so that everybody knows, that question that I asked you about blowing your horn or doing whatever, that was just out of the blue.
That's fine.
But you were well prepared for it.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, sir.
All right, that was the fourth of our fourth interview today. So we have no more interviews today. We will probably be going into executive session, but with that, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Is that on the agenda?
Yes. Yeah.
We have to quote chapter and verse with that.
Yeah. It's on the- It's on the one back there.
Who has a current one? We have to quote chapter and verse.
I know it's on.
I have it right here. So like I said, with that, I need a motion for executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I propose that we go into executive session according to the Freedom of Information Act, section 30-4-70, K1, discussion of employment, appointment, compensation, promotion, demotion, discipline, or release of an.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So, this meeting is adjourned to go into executive session. You all are welcome to wait, and we will